Meeting of the following will come to order. The Victorville City Council and the same council, also sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the City as Housing Assets successor, Joint Powers Financing Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Becerra.
Present.
Councilmember Gomez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Present.
Mayor Jones.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. So Madam Clerk, before we move on to the introduction to public comments, do we have requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I would like to speak.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you do me the honor this evening of reading the introduction?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Victorville City Council. Your City Council is interested in your ideas and opinions and furthermore endeavors to incorporate them into its deliberations. At the same time, the council must be able to carry out its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruption. Therefore, this meeting will be administered in accordance with the council's established policies and procedures and Government Code Section 54957.9. Individual speakers may address the council once during the public comment period for up to 3 minutes and are requested to comment as briefly as the subject permits. All testimony is limited to the closed session items posted on this agenda and must be directed solely to the council. An opportunity to speak on other agenda items and non-agendized matters will be provided during the public comment section once the regular session convenes at 6 p.m. Individual council members who speak as members of the public do so without the semblance or presumption of authority derived from a public office and are subject to the same meeting rules of conduct and decorum as other public participants. Whether attending this meeting in person or via Zoom, once comments are invited, the speaker will be called on by name, then recognized by the presiding officer. The speaker will state the closed session item number that will be addressed. Audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, and those who do are subject to removal from the meeting pursuant to Penal Code 403. Your understanding and cooperation are appreciated.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Gomez, you're free to make your way to the podium. And if you'll kindly let us know which or both of the closed session items you're going to be speaking to.
So I'm quite beside myself. I didn't understand why we had items and they're not reflected with titles. So whether they're pertinent to one or two, because they don't have a title, I can't tell you if it's one or two or both. But today's item definitely has to do with filing a lawsuit, City of Victorville against Mr. Scott Rafferty. I never got news of that. I never voted yes or no or heard of a motion to have a lawsuit being rendered to Scott Rafferty. So I think this is the perfect way to bring it up. I don't know if other council members knew about it or talked about it with any other of the management team. Certainly I wasn't a part of it. Any of the closed sessions that I was in, I never heard of anything. So hopefully one of those two sessions we can talk about, and hopefully from now on, instead of making a decision, bringing it forth, the council can either say yay or nay in regards to that, because I think when we expend dollars, because it's not free to sue anybody, obviously it does come from taxpayer dollars. And I think taxpayers are very interested in understanding why the City of Victorville is suing Scott Rafferty, who brought up on December 2021, and we approved the by-district election. So I don't know what's going on. I just know hopefully that's not what we're seeing today, but I know for a fact that that has been something that the City of Victorville has submitted. So now I have to find out all the extras, and hopefully tonight is that it. And if it's not, let me let you know that that's why I thought we were elected, because we make the decisions and help the administration. So unfortunately, you know, that wasn't there.
Ask you to move
So
on.
it's beside the point of what happened. Why are we not being included? You know, so I took an oath in office just like every one of you did. No one can strip me from it with any words, with muting, with censorship, none of that. So I just want to make sure that you understand that that's very concerning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. And no one would want to deprive you of your First Amendment rights as a member of the public and certainly not as a member of the council. Mr. DePortnowski, did you wish to respond to any of that? There's some pretty strong allegations by the public member.
The only lawsuit involving Mr. Rafferty is an interpleader, which was authorized by this city council to file an interpleader to determine whether Mr. Rafferty or Mr. Shankman was going to be receiving the compensation as part of the districting process. But that was fully briefed by with this council and given direction to do so.
Right, thank you. Mr. DePortnowski, Madam Clerk, any other requests?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, will you please set the timer for 30 seconds in case we have a member of our Zoom audience who would like to speak and is experiencing technical difficulties, we'd like to assist in that way.
Madam Mayor, 30 seconds has lapsed and there are no additional speakers.
All right, thank you. With that said, the public comment period is now closed and the chair brings the item back to the council. We're going to move on to declaration of closed session items. Mr. DePortnowski.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. We have two items this evening. They are both existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. And at this time, disclosure of the information related to that could jeopardize potential settlement negotiations which are ongoing. To the extent there's reportable action, we will report it at the conclusion of the closed session or the commencement of the 6 o'clock regular session.
All right, thank you very much. With that said, we're in recess to closed session. We will resume open session at 6 p.m. Well, less than a minute. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, August 16, 2022. The time is 6 p.m. and we're resuming the open session of our regular meeting, the following of which will now come to order. The Victorville City Council and the same council also sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the City is Housing Assets successor, Joint Powers Financing Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, will you kindly call the roll?
Councilmember Becerra.
Here.
Councilmember Gomez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Present.
Mayor Jones.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we're going to move on to closed session announcements by our City Attorney, Mr. D. Bortnowski.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. We had two closed session items this evening. Both were existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. At this point, disclosing information related to that could jeopardize settlement discussions. At this point, there is no reportable action with respect to each one of those items.
All right, tthank you very much, Mr. D. Bortnowski. We're now going to move on to the invocation led this evening by Pastor Mike Roberts of High Desert Church. And then that's going to be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance led by Police Captain John Wickham. Pastor, will you please step up to the podium? Everyone, please stand if you're able.
On behalf of High Desert Church, I just want to thank you all for your servant leadership for our community, and thank you for the privilege personally for being here to welcome and open the service. Let's pray. Father, we give you thanks for our city. We ask God for wisdom for this council as they consider the matters at hand. And we ask, Lord, that you might allow everything that is said in this meeting to be done with dignity and honor, respect. We pray, God, that you would protect our community, that you would allow those in leadership to lead us well into the future. And Lord, we just thank you for just the privilege that these folks have to serve. And we pray that you would bless them in that service. And we ask for this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Captain. All right, we're next going to move on to our special presentations. This evening, we have one on the 2022 Fireworks Enforcement Program. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We do have a presentation for you. It'll be led by Mr. George Duran, your code enforcement official. Pinch hitting with him will be Sue Jones, our public information officer. They're here to present with you our program, what we've accomplished over this last fireworks enforcement season, how it measures up against previous years, and some thoughts as to what we can look forward in future years. So with that.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Before you begin, so to my colleagues, you have a hard copy of the presentation in front of you. If you could hold your thoughts and questions until the presentation is concluded, it would be appreciated. Mr. Duran, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for allowing us to provide you with a short presentation on our efforts this year for fireworks. I think you'll find that the efforts were seamless, complete, and very objective. Next slide, please. To start, I wanted to kind of highlight the departments and staff that were involved in this effort. Our public works team, or our IT team, who helps us with our surveys and our methods for the residents to report their impacts. Our PIO, of course, our licensing staff in charge of identifying rental property owners, who you'll see later we provided some notice to. And of course, our city attorney's office, who helps us with any prosecution of or challenged citations for those that have been issued. Our field enforcement staff consists of course, our police department, generally about 4 officers, our code enforcement animal control team, and along with our fire prevention inspectors. Next slide, please. Our fine structure remained the same. We have a $1,000 minimum fine situated with a progressive fine schedule of $2,000 and $3,000 for repeat fines. We did find that is quite in line with other jurisdictions. There are a few other jurisdictions that have higher fines, but you'll see later in the slide we have perhaps some suggestions to further amplify the fine structure, the administrative fine structure. The misdemeanor fines, of course, is still something as a tool available to us, and it's primarily for our penalties that meet that threshold, the criminal threshold, where we can be successful in court to prosecute those at that level. Next slide, please. As we do in our prior efforts, we start our planning stages for this effort, usually around mid to late April, and identify what our public outreach is going to consist of. What have we learned? What was some of the feedback that we heard from our residents? This year, we revised the notice that went out to 71,000. We did 71,000 inserts, roughly about 35,000 utility bills. And in addition to that, noticed a little bit over 5,300 rental property owners, specifically with this notice. And we revised the notice primarily to engage both the occupant and the property owner, rental property owner specifically, to encourage them to speak to their tenants. New this year in our notice, we added the ability for us to review photographic evidence. In reporting fireworks, the residents are able to submit photos and so forth, still photos that show some of the activity, and the officers are in charge of reviewing those photos and seeing if it's something actionable that we can do. So that seemed to have gotten some attention, specifically from residents impacted by their neighbors. Next slide, please. Our proactive efforts included posting 100 posters throughout 50 VVTA buses. We did that last year as well. 11 fireworks program posters placed at bus stops. We did some radio ads and some other social media efforts that our PIO, Sue Jones, will touch on in just a bit. We continue to add 4 electronic traffic message boards posted at Highway 395 in Luna, Highway 395 in Palmdale, Bear Valley, and in Armagosa, and La Paz and La Paz. And we moved the one on Highway 395 in Luna to areas near Bear Valley and Cobalt to try to focus on those folks living in that side of our community, and to Bear Valley and Amethyst as well. Our public works folks helped us with that graciously. Next slide, please. And Sue Jones will cover here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We used our social media platform again this year, the city social media platform. And our platform includes Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And right now we have followers, about 25,600 followers. Our goals were to inform that fireworks are illegal, but also to encourage our residents to fill out the online reporting tool to let us know of illegal fireworks activity. This graph shows the interactions that took place on the city's official social media platform. And as you can see, the interactions decreased significantly over the past 3 years. And so this year, we could see a reduction of about 52% over the interactions last year, and about 86% fewer interactions than we had in 2020. And this is basically indicative of an overall trend we're seeing, where things were basically quieter this year, as we like to say. Next slide. And we also employed geofencing. And geofencing basically enables us to push a digital ad into a specific geographic area. And we use this to target neighborhoods where we've had significant reporting of illegal fireworks or a high number of citations issued. And we looked at that over the last 2 years. Last year, we targeted 3 neighborhoods specifically, and this year we added 3 more. So for a total of 6 neighborhoods. The neighborhoods we targeted were Fairfax Ranch, Liberty Park area, Hook Park, Village Park, Tawny Ridge area, Eagle Ranch, Brentwood, and the Doris Davies Park area. Our digital ad, again, included our campaign message, but it also provided a link where folks could immediately go and click that link and get to our online reporting tool. Our ads were seen 300,000 times or approximately 300,000 times. And our ad produced and basically did better than the national average significantly. And you could see there's some stats there. Ad interactions are basically when you're kind of scrolling on Instagram or out surfing or ad pops up. If you stay with it and hover over it and spend time with it, then you get the full message. That's an interaction. And engagement is basically you clicked through the ad and went to the online reporting tool, or maybe you saw the ad and then came back to the website and used it later. And basically you can see that our ad produced nearly 17 times better than the national average.
Thank you, Sue. Next slide, please. This graph here aims to show you the expenses related to our efforts. $16,000 and some change for hard cost. And I would say that geofencing is quite effective, knowing that, you know, most of us now have a smartphone, and those that are riding on our vehicle have a smartphone. And so we're seeing that it's a great way directly to remind you know, visitors or occupants that we have a comprehensive zero tolerance program for fireworks. And you'll see that reflected here in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Based on feedback from our residents, of course, we revised our reporting tool. We made it much easier for them to access the report. We revised the layout. Our IT department did a great job doing that. And we heard them and saw that perhaps some folks were being discouraged by providing what their name was. We went right to the issue: is what are you encountering? That's the first question that you see on that survey. Is it aerial fireworks? Are they safe and sane fireworks? And then that also allows us to prioritize our staff to be able to respond to more impactful fireworks. Of course, our aerial fireworks are the ones that we hear, you know, exploding. And so we made a few other revisions to the form, but what resulted is an improved, more accurate location to better, you know, make our resources a lot more efficient. Next slide, please. This slide displays the activity that related to fireworks reports online. A dramatic decrease from 2020. I mean, 2020 notable is we were, you know, post the pandemic. Of course, we have a lot of folks at home. It was a weekend, 4th of July, landing on a Saturday. And so you'll see in the later slides, we were quite busy on 2020 and 2021 issuing fines. And as we'll conclude here later in the slide is we feel that our residents know, seeing that we, you know, officers out on patrol with lights on, issuing citations, coupled with the electronic billboards, the geofencing is a constant reminder for those that we are committed and serious in investing in this program. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of a reduction in reporting activity in 2022. Next slide, please. The map before you here is a comparison between 21 and 22. The dots indicating reports that had actual addresses And the buffer zones are reports where there was no address generated, but more so of a street location. Notable, we did see an increase in the square mile area, the area just north of Bear Valley there on the right side of 2022. And something, you know, the Sheriff's Department and our team were trying to target as well. Next slide, please. The slide here before you is shows the amount of shift efforts that we did in both 2021 and 22. Clearly, the added code enforcement staff and our expanded code enforcement staff allowed us to really expand our shifts. This year, we added additional shifts for weekday enforcement, something that we didn't do much years prior. So we focused much of those efforts the last 2 weeks of June, really trying to zero in on the occasional firework user that, you know, was just eager to get going to 4th of July. And obviously as well, it also provides the number of officers that were on the 4th of July, which we'll focus on just shortly. Next slide, please. Total number of fines for the effort is displayed before you here. Of course, 2020 at 180 fines, 91 in 21 and 47 in 22. But I should tell you is that the if I can kind of give you a bit of an image of the process of issuing a fine. What we see, what the officers will generally see is a panic scatter from other people that unfortunately aren't being contacted by law enforcement to pack up their stuff and go inside and shut off the lights. But the reality is that that's the reaction that we want. And I think seeing 2020 and 21 reflective of that, again, with our ongoing efforts for public outreach, is again a constant reminder, especially perhaps for those that we do mean business, and we're going to have a zero tolerance approach for this. Next slide, please. This is the effort specifically on 4th of July, targeting 4th of July, being of course that 4th of July is our busiest day in this effort. 2020, of course, at 110 citations, and the yellow represents the number of officers that were on. And again, the expanded amount of officers that we have enabled us to really expand our patrol efforts. And this year, unlike last year and the year prior, is the officers were instructed to drive around with their ambers on, primarily to you know, impress on the public that there was patrols going on. Next slide, please. The map here shows the locations of citations issued on 4th of July. Most of the activity we're seeing there on the near the, that would be the Dos Palmas, Luna area, just east of 395 in 2022. Next slide. This year, unlike 2021, the amount of fireworks confiscated was much lower. Notable information that we retained from our county fire folks, they confiscated a total of about 11,000 pounds of fireworks at the state agriculture's checkpoint. Something notable for us because, of course, you know, Victorville is the next closest stop from that side from Barstow, and that otherwise I see would have made it to, you know, to our town. Next slide, please. Focusing on our animal control and impacts to pets, we also did see a decrease in that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, for the especially in the number of deceased animal calls from 4 to 1 last year, and so we did obviously also see a decrease. Generally, the 5th of July is the busiest day for animal control. Next slide, please. And in summary, what we saw is a decrease in activity. We were able to add more officers on weekend patrols from expanded code enforcement staff. We added, like I said, weekday patrols. We were able to, with added staff, we were able to complete next day on-site responses for those reports that we just couldn't get to at night shifts with a door hanger that basically says we received a report and in an effort to deter that. And of course, we added additional staff to our 4th of July event. Prior year, zero tolerance efforts resulted in reduced fireworks activity as noted. And I believe that the expanded geofencing advertising did reach to a focused group in our community. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, and I should say also as well that we did see an increase in the engagement from rental property owners calling us, letting us know that they talked to their tenant about the received notice. Some anticipated improvements as we always want to, aim for our next level of improvement. In the enhancement of the violation, what we're seeing is there are some jurisdictions going from we currently have a 6-month period where if a person violates that fireworks ordinance, they will jump up to the next $2,000, $3,000 fine. Many jurisdictions are going to a 36-month period, which makes some sense. And that'll obviously allow us to keep those properties in a bit of a probationary status, if you will. And they specifically actually in crafting some of those ordinances, call out skyrockets and so forth, and not necessarily leave out some of the safe and sane stuff. Some of those penalties as well, as I should note, are pretty hefty. There are some jurisdictions that also increase their penalties for sales. That's probably something I'd like to focus on next year as well. And of course, we'd like to expand the use of geofencing. We see that to be quite efficient, and potentially looking at the use of drone technology to specifically in areas that have, half-acre lots or so forth, a little harder to catch where some of these activities not necessarily happening on the street. That's my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Duran. Okay, for this council members, since we're not going to be taking any action, we're going to combine the question and comment period and with a 2-minute timing on that. And so we'll begin with Member Gomez.
Does the online reporting portal function 24/7?
Yes.
What's the process for the alleged reporting of fireworks?
It gets sent to all of our staff and it's vetted and investigated.
Do any first-time warnings get issued beforehand?
No, not unless there's a need for it, but if it's a valid violation, they're cited.
Does the 300+ time contain multiple clicks of the same person? Do we know? So remember, Sue Jones talked about the clicking 300,000. Is that per person, or does that include me clicking on it like 4 or 5 times?
300,000 referred to the times that the ad was pushed and seen. So it could be the same person seeing it.
Thank you. The hard cost that you spoke about, is that only a cost recovery to pay for the time that employees expended, or does that include also the sheriff's interaction and what they need to do?
No, these are just expenses related to the radio ads, the usage of electronic boards, et cetera.
And does Victorville oversee any efforts in unincorporated areas?
We don't, but notable, we did receive reports in other areas outside of our jurisdiction.
And how does the city obtain a fee when there's no payment? How do we get curated? How do we get that penalty back?
Well, if the fine is assessed against a person and they fail to pay, it could be intercepted by the franchise tax board.
Okay. And has the zero tolerant efforts affected low income and non-English speaking or limited English speaking of quote unquote offenders? How has it affected them? Have we measured that at all? Low income?
We don't measure that. It's they're in violation.
But your ads are hopefully in multiple languages, or are they? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And how do we address people who are illiterate and can't read? We have a couple of those, just so you know. We don't, not yet. Oh, well, I just wanted to bring the question so we think of something like this. Oh yeah, and have we thought about utilizing any surplus land to maybe utilize for a sector of our public that actually wants to do their own firework or something around the county? Anything like that? Have you thought about an option like that?
We don't, but we have a pretty good show that we set up every year and partner with our fairgrounds to accomplish that.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Member Becerra.
Thank you. Mr. Duran, very well put together. It was brought up, maybe our low-income folks are being affected by this. What's the average cost of those fireworks that get thrown up into the air, the ones that go thump? Don't they cost maybe $100 each?
At the very least. I would
Yeah.
say.
So if you're low income, you ain't got no business buying fireworks at all, correct? Tell the staff, thank you very much for the time and effort they put into it. I know they were away from their family on 4th of July, and we all usually are close to family then. Thank them for their efforts. Thank them for everything they did.
Thank you, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Duran and Ms. Jones, this was a very nice presentation. I like the visuals. And so based on the data that was presented, the feedback is we had a very robust social media campaign. I was one of the scrollers. So, and obviously increased manpower on the streets made a difference. So that means our program's working. I'm happy to see that we anticipate using drone technology perhaps next year. So kudos to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, well, let me just echo the sentiments of my colleagues. I'm very proud of the effort that our city has made in stepping this up every year and anticipating what we might be looking at next year. I know that a lot of work goes into dealing with all that. I noticed very clearly this year that there was almost, at least in my neighborhood, which is usually a war zone and or Disneyland on the 4th of July. And there was almost no lead up at all. Most of it happened on July 4th. Started around the same time, but it ended much earlier too. It seemed like it ended several hours earlier. So that leads me to my question. I know that we're seeing all this drop in fines and reports and so forth. But I just, and I'm glad for it, but I also know that there could be other reasons for that. For instance, 2020 was a huge year, and that's when everyone got stimulus checks. And I think that was, a time when people wanted to get out and do something. Do we consider those things as well? And, right now people don't have as much money in their pocket to spend on things like this. Do you think that might be a factor?
Absolutely. I think 2020, again, we're dealing with the pandemic. We had a lot of folks at home. We had a lot of available funding, available cash. I like to say again that the day that the July 4th landed was on a Saturday, has a lot to do with it as well. There's a good lead up on Friday, Saturday, and again, another really 4th of July on Sunday. So what we're looking for now is, the next 4th of July will be in midweek. Perhaps we're looking at a downturn as well.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other thing, I like the step up in the fines, and I love the idea of increasing it to a 36-month window. I think that makes a lot of sense. I do know that in Long Beach, unless they've changed it recently, that they have a very, very stiff fine structure. And I don't know whether it's been tested in the courts, but I think the fine is $20,000 or $25,000 if you're a property owner and there's a party at that home where fireworks are going off. It's very rigid. So let's hope we never get there. I wouldn't want any of our residents facing that, but we have to protect our neighbors and our property and our animals and our veterans who suffer so much from PTSD. So again, I echo all of the sentiments. Thank you so much for the hard work that went into this presentation. Thank you. My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, pardon me. All right, Madam Clerk, will you present the agenda and revisions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no revisions to the agenda tonight.
Thank you very much. All right, council members, any conflicts of interest to declare?
No, ma'am.
Okay, hearing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to the introduction to public comments. Madam Clerk, any requests?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Madam Clerk, will you do me the honor of reading the introduction to comments?
Certainly, Madam Mayor. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Victorville City Council. Your city council is interested in your ideas and opinions and furthermore endeavors to incorporate them into its deliberations. At the same time, the council must be able to carry out its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruption. Therefore, this meeting will be administered in accordance with the council's established policies and procedures in Government Code Section 54957.9. Individuals may speak on agenda items or on issues not posted on the agenda during the public comments section, provided those issues are within the subject matter's jurisdiction of the city council. Individual speakers may address the council once per public comment period and once per public hearing item for up to 3 minutes. Additional time may be allotted for appeal hearings in accordance with the city's adopted policy and procedure manual. Those who desire to comment on a public hearing item may wish to reserve their remarks until the particular public hearing has been opened. All testimony is to be directed solely to the council. Although open meeting laws do not permit council members to engage in dialogue with any speakers during the public comment periods, please know your comments and questions may be taken into consideration by council members when discussing a particular agenda item. The presiding officer may briefly respond or have staff respond to statements or questions, or may request that the staff report back to the council at a subsequent meeting. Speakers are required to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Individual council members who speak as a member of the public do so without the semblance and presumption of authority derived from her public office and are subject to the same meeting rules of conduct and decorum as other public participants. Whether attending this meeting in person or via Zoom, once comments are invited, the speaker will be called on by name and recognized by the presiding officer. The speaker will state the item number or numbers that will be addressed and that the subject is a non-agendized matter. Audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, and those who do are subject to removal from the meeting pursuant to Penal Code 403. Your understanding and cooperation are appreciated.
All right, well, we're going to begin with any in-chamber request to speak.
Our first speaker is Henry Hernandez.
Do we have,
We have a mic on.
there's a mic right there? We're good. We're good. Welcome. We're happy to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, for the opportunity to be able to come and present what we propose. My name is Pastor Henry Hernandez, and I'm one of the ministers at Victorville. And I just want to take the time to let you know that we want to be hosting an event called March for Hope. I know that you are aware of everything that's going around in our city, our community, our nation, and I think that if ever there was a need, now's the time for us to spread that hope and love to the community. And this hope, March for Hope, we propose to have it October 15th at 10 a.m. Now, what we are, let me take these glasses off. What we are asking the city of Victorville is to be able to block off a portion of the streets on Victor Street and Ramada from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is October 15th to allow churches that we're partnering with and also community-based organizations to march on the streets and then set up vendors for our community event. The time for this will be from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. We understand that people do have to get through the thoroughways, so we don't want to take too much of the time, but we do want to make it safe. We also will have special music, entertainment, giveaways, and resources that the community so desperately needs. Like I said, it's a community outreach. It's partnering with other church-based organizations, and the participation is very, very vital for us to be able to reach more people. And that's what we're here for today, just to be able to make you aware of it. So what we're asking is that you would partner with us and help us to facilitate this event. And I know that it's going to make an impact. We believe it's going to make an impact. So I have a handout for you guys to look at. And
Thank you. If you're free to give it to us.
yeah, and there's a map there, but it's not very detailed, but you know.
Just all to the city clerk. We're good.
Give them all.
I'll give them all. She'll pass them out. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, if for more questions, we will be back to give you details and updates on where we're at as far as questions that you may have as a council. But we really, really think it's very, very vital, especially like we were talking before even the meeting came, that there's a perfect time right now. The weather's permitting it, and there's a lot of people out there. But we see the eyes of people, we see the children, and we want to be able to make an impact. So really, really quick, if you didn't know, Victory Outreach is an international church-oriented Christian ministry called to the task of evangelizing and discipling the hurting people of the world with a message of hope and plan of Jesus Christ. Victory Outreach inspires and instills within people the desire to fulfill their potential in life with a sense of dignity, belonging, and destiny. And Victory Outreach also works cooperatively with others of mutual purpose in accomplishing the task before us. And I think that we have a mutual thing in common. You know, we both love our cities. We are here. We want to do our best to bring hope to the city. We're here to offer our services. We're the church, and we believe that we have a voice, and we want to be able to share that voice. And we desperately need your guys' help in doing that and making sure that it's a safe event. So we will march to bring a message of hope to our community. All right, City of Victory, we're asking that you will partner.
Your time is up.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so Pastor, hold on just one moment. Keith, would it be the best idea for someone from his congregation to contact your office to get the details on that?
That'd be fine.
So if you'll contact the city manager's office, they'll walk you through the process of getting this going.
Thank you
Pastor,
for your
we sure
time.
do appreciate you coming for us tonight.
God bless you.
And to everyone that you brought with you, thank you.
I brought our youth here tonight. So
I see that. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you. Yes, yes, yes.
When you're ready to run, I'll help you run for office.
Member Gomez has not been recognized by the chair.
I said I wasn't recognized either.
About to
Thank
say
you.
it. Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any other in-chambers requests?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Our next speaker is Dave Gross on a non-agendized item.
Good evening, Mr. Gross, and welcome. It's been a while since we've seen you.
Been 3 years. Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Dave Gross. I own DG's Lawn Care here in Victorville. I've been a member of this community since 1990. Unfortunately, I'd like to say the things are growing good here in the city of Victorville, but they're not. Our homeless situation has gotten worse. Typically about this point is when I pull out my taser and show you what one of my tools is. It's not a lawnmower, it's not a weed whacker, it's not a shovel. It's a taser these days. My guys have to walk into dumpster enclosures, and we're attacked by homeless. We see them with needles hanging out of their arms, defecating in the dumpster enclosures. I'm going through my accounts today, and I saw so much trash generated from the homeless. It's not just the people here in Victorville. It's not people throwing it out of their cars. It's the homeless taking it out of the dumpsters and dumping it everywhere they can. I know the homeless situation is something that's a hard situation to deal with, and we've been trying to deal with it. This is the first time I've been able to come here since, 2020, when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, but I'm still here. And I'm going to keep fighting to get the city cleaned up. The fields have become just homeless encampments. They go into the dumpster enclosures and they move stuff out into the fields. Then they catch fire. They go into the dumpster enclosures and we are attacked. There's got to be a solution to it. I know there's the situation or the hotel that they set up out there on Stoddard Wells Road. It's a temporary solution. There's people that want to get help and there's people that don't want to get help. Do I have the answer? Unfortunately not. All I know is we've got to do something. I know code enforcement has done a great job of cleaning up the fields. In fact, with the fireworks thing, they did a great job of fireworks this year. I noticed a huge decrease, but back to the homeless. We've got to do something to keep the homeless at bay. They're destroying our shopping centers. Property owners are incurring all kinds of costs, and it's out of hand. I've only got 1 minute left. So the other issue is we have so many guys coming into our town doing business illegally. I buy a business license every year for the city of Victorville. There's nobody here to enforce it. So why am I spending $100 a year or whatever it is to buy a business license for the city of Victorville and the other cities? When I first started my business in 1987 in Laverne, we got a sticker that had to go onto our vehicles. Code enforcement, as they're driving around, if there wasn't a sticker on your vehicle, you got a citation. City of Victorville needs to implement some kind of enforcement to get these people that are doing work legally here in the city of Victorville, not putting revenue back into the city, putting it in their pockets. And I think the sticker program would work. If you have any questions on that, I'm more than willing to talk to you about it, but it worked in Laverne, Pomona, Duarte, and
Time is
Claremont.
out.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you coming
Thank
and
you.
sharing with us again. As you know, what you said the last time you spoke had a great impact. I want you to know our council hears you very clearly.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is Brendan O'Brien on a non-agendized item.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, we're glad to see you again. Welcome.
So much. My name is Brendan O'Brien. I represent a small group of investors. We're committed to working with the city to revitalize Old Town Route 66 in the Old Town corridor. With that said, I really appreciate you putting the issue of streetlights in that Old Town on the agenda last week and then discussing it. I really appreciate the sincerity. With that said, I think that one thing that came out of the conversations and the public conversations is that there is definitely across the board unanimous concern over the lighting, and I think that it's just a small piece that could help deter some of the crime that's in the city, the rampant crime, and the vandalism, of course, the assaults, the battery. But even more importantly, I think that it could definitely address some of the more violent crimes against people. That's I think what we're really looking at, because a lot of the crime happens to people are homeless. They search refuge and to sleep in darker corners. I think it was also established that from a legal perspective, I don't know if we can definitely say that it's the actual cause, but there's definitely a correlation between approximate cause between, but for if there's the street lighting not being available, arson, robbery, potentially murder could happen. So I think there's some negligence that could possibly be the city could be left open to. The other thing I would like to discuss is that the documents that were presented from engineering, I think they're great, but I think they're a little bit outdated. They were 2 years old. I went after the meeting last time to look at the lights, and there's a lot of lights that were depicted as having on the telephone poles. Lights were actually non-existent and kind of inaccurate. In addition to comments of the city engineering team, based on that study 2 years ago, I think that there may be an opportunity for us to add cameras to the lights. I know that they mentioned the Cobra lighting. One of the other issues that was brought out is that the underground cables that need to be put out would be cost prohibitive. However, since the telephones exist in the Southern California Edison, they already have power. That could be a way to work around it. It's also established that there's an existing amount of $100,000 in that budget, per APN that's dedicated towards paying the street lighting for each APN. That $100,000 could be used, very, very judiciously, in the sense that if you look at from a corridor from 4th Street to, from B Street to D Street, and from 5th Street to 8th Street, there's really about 40 telephone poles that are still lacking lights. It is really dark down there. It is really dark down there. There's numerous situations, altercations that we're dealing with every day. Everyone knows about the things that have happened in the last couple of weeks, including the murder. I think these would go a long way to help fix those. My 3 requests is that engineering maybe relook at that the city council propose that the engineering team relook at the lights and
Our time is up.
propose to city council.
As long as you're very quickly, it's like a sentence.
Engineering, city planning, city council, review it again and add cameras to the lights, and don't get rid of the decorative lighting.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you, Mr. O'Brien. Madam Clerk.
Our next speaker is Deanne Hudgens
Good evening, Ms. Hutchins. Welcome.
on a non-agendized item.
Thank you.
Good evening, excuse me, Mayor and Council. This evening, I'd like to speak about Measure P. First of all, I'm seeing more traffic officers on the street, which I really appreciate. And I know that's coming from our Measure P revenue. And looking at the information on the city website, it appears there's only been 3 meetings of the Citizens Oversight Committee. 2 in May of 21 and 1 in June of 22. And according to the bylaws, the review list, they're supposed to review the list of proposed expenditures to be funded by Measure P and report to the city no later than May 15th of each year for upcoming budget year. Its conformance or non-conformance with the intent of Measure P is outlined in the May 2020 Public Safety Plan prior to being considered by the City Council. The meeting this year, the notification went out on June 8th as a special meeting, and the meeting was held on June 9th. So it doesn't appear that we made a May 15th deadline then. Also, it doesn't appear that doesn't appear that there's any scheduled meetings like regularly, quarterly, semi-annually, any of that kind of thing for the city, for the oversight. So if anybody would choose to come, put it on their calendar, it's not there. In reviewing the letter submitted by the city's Citizens Oversight Committee, there are items paid for by Measure P revenue that are not included in the information on the Measure P page. There's a list of all the items that were supposed to be addressed by Measure P funds. And if you go on the page, they're listed over there. Since the revenue goes directly into the general fund and not a special fund, there are no restrictions on how the money is spent. My concern is that the expenditure of Measure P monies is being extended to areas not originally promised or stated that they would be to the community. And so those of us who worked hard to get that measure passed, I'm seeing things that were not things that we were telling people about what to vote for, such as salary, such as vehicles that are not related to public safety. And I know it's not a special fund. The city oversight committee or the oversight committee is charged with determining if the expenditures conform to the intent of Measure P. I'm not sure what that means. This is a broken promise made to the community. Was this just a ploy to enhance the general fund? I'm really concerned money is being spread out much farther than was ever intended when we were promised what this money was going to be spent for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hudgens. So just very briefly, Mr. Metzler, there's some very strong statements just made. My understanding is that we do in fact have a special fund to receive those Measure P monies. Is that correct?
That is correct. And just for the benefit of making the record correct, Ms. Hudgens did make a number of assertions that are just plainly not connected with the truth or reality of what's actually occurring. We may have missed the May 15th date this year. I'll have to double check on that. But we have in fact complied with the intent that the Measure P committee actually meet in advance of the city council's budget hearings so that there's an opportunity for the Measure P oversight committee to actually review and advise that what the council is about to consider in the budget does include a plan for expenditures that are consistent with the intent of Measure P. And while Ms. Hudgens may not know exactly what the intent means, the staff and certainly the committee that's charged with overseeing that responsibility does. And in fact, does look at it from a budgetary perspective where those revenues are not dumped into the general fund, instead a fund of its own that's entitled Measure P, so that we can properly account and make sure we're actually fulfilling the promise by this council that it is spending those monies consistent with the original intent when it placed the measure on the ballot.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk.
That concludes in-chamber speakers.
Like to speak.
All right. So Ms. Gomez is going to speak as a member of the audience. And so Chair reminds the audience that Member Gomez has to conduct herself as a member of the audience, same rules of participation as anyone else, with no semblance of authority as a council member. Ms. Gomez, welcome again.
Absolutely. In 2016, I was elected and I have an oath. My name is Blanca Gomez and I sit over there. I do want to make a public comment about a couple of issues: housing, small business owners, and homelessness. This council approved not too long ago the square footage of homes being around 1,600 square feet, which means that a lot of members who want to buy a home here, that they're living here with low incomes or incomes that are very mitigated depending on the circumstances. Unfortunately, thank you for recording me, Ms. Becerra, by the way, I appreciate that.
Ms. Gomez will kindly speak to the full of the council.
So it's very difficult when the council approves for something and we have a lot of members who are low income, and we need to have a lot of homeowners in the areas where their income is based on sometimes wages that are very low. And so I wanted to bring that to the attention because the community isn't aware of that. Several realtors reached out to me and made that point. I said, you know what? No wonder I questioned that item. It was really important for questioning. I wasn't sure what it really meant until you started to allow me to understand that. Another thing we talk about a lot is small businesses. Well, we have a lot of small businesses who actually occupy positions within swap meets or within gallerias and things of that nature. They're occupants. And a lot of the times our small businesses, who are they as well, don't have the opportunity to go inside that bigger mall, right? The corporations. And I think we have to allow the city to, when it mitigates any of these circumstances, to be considerate. What does a small business owner look like? And that may be someone who sells corn on the street. It may be someone who sells their services from their home, but we don't consider them business owners. As a matter of fact, not too long ago, Migos came in as a pilot project, and this city council wrote a letter to the county of San Bernardino say, we're not going to allow that to happen in the city of Victorville. Thus, we have a lot of vendors out in the street, and we want to target those members, but they are members that contribute wholeheartedly to here, this area. Whether they're documented or not, they can file taxes, but they don't get anything like you and I who are citizens. And that's a travesty. And lastly, we always like to take the blame for the homeless, this, that. It's always the homeless. When was the last time you were sitting down with a homeless, having a conversation or with a meal with them? When was that last time? Yesterday? This morning? We don't have bathrooms for them to utilize. We don't have showers. I see them outside of Starbucks showering with a cup. That's embarrassing to them. They're also humans. We need to be more considerate when we want to blame the homeless for everything that happens because they're not here to defend themselves, but I'm their voice.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. Madam Clerk?
There are no more in-chamber speakers.
All right, so that concludes our request to speak via in chambers. We're now going to go to our Zoom audience.
Yes, our first speaker is Galaxy A12.
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. This is Maggie Martin. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I would like to say to George Duran and Sue Jones, fabulous presentation, fabulous. I loved every bit of it. A concern though from the people behind the dais that I have is economics, race, this group or that group was brought into the mix of that conversation. And I don't think I misunderstood, but I'm clear that I'm not clear exactly about what that reference was. But I do want to make this point clear. The law is applied evenly to everybody, irrespective, as it should be, irrespective of a person's economics or any other condition. It's if you break the law, it's applied evenly. If you're penalized, the city's going to write you a ticket, or the police are going to take you to jail, or whatever the case might be. So I was kind of, I don't know if the correct word is rebuffed. I was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. Why are we talking about someone's economics or the COVID pandemic and people are at home and how they're spending their money? I'm like, that to me, that's totally, with all due respect, and I don't even know which members brought this up, but with all due respect, to me, that is personally very irrelevant when it comes to applying the even hand of the law. So jumping onto to the next thing, I wanted to bring Mr. Gross that was there about the homelessness and the trash can problem and saying there's no solution. Well, it's been a long time. I'll be honest about that. It's been a long time, but last I knew, the city, well, the Burtec has locking trash dumpsters that can be locked. And of course, they carry a set of keys for those. And I know firsthand that that is a good solution. I don't know. I know might be a little more costly, to whoever the business person was, but I don't know if Mr. Gross is aware of that, and I'd like him to be aware of that. So that's really all I have, Madam Mayor and Council. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Madam Clerk.
There are no additional speakers.
All right, with that said, will you kindly set the timer for 30 seconds? This extra time is being offered to assist members of our Zoom audience experiencing technical difficulties so that they may have additional time to overcome any difficulties if they would like to speak.
Madam Mayor, 30 seconds has lapsed and there are no additional speakers.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. With that said, public comment period is now closed and the chair brings the item back to the council. We're going to now move on to our first business in order, which is public hearings. We're going to begin with item number 1. This is the award of the construction contract pipeline replacement project area 1 and 2. Mr. Metzler, will you kindly introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Yes, this item is effectively the last phase or final phase of a much larger project that started in the Old Town area back in 2015, where we embarked upon altogether replacing all of the small diameter pipelines that exist. So this effectively takes us to the last of it, which is about 11,000 feet of small diameter pipeline being replaced, really with the intent of replacing the aging, the leak prone and the fire flow deficient water lines in that area. So with that, this is dealing with an award of construction, and it's authored by your city engineer, Mr. Brian Gangler. He's available for any questions or comments you might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, the recommendation, please.
That the Honorable Board of Directors open and conduct the public hearing, close the public hearing, approve the notice of exemption, and award a construction contract to DDH Apple Valley Construction in the amount of $5,291,906 for the pipeline replacement project area 1 and 2.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm now going to move on to technical questions for clarification, specifically as it relates to the staff report, and then more narrowly for the award of the construction contract. So with that said, we're going to begin with Member Becerra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Metzler, if I may, Mr. Gangler, is this just the water main or water services also that are being changed out or upgraded? I'm sorry.
This includes water services and water main replacements both.
And along with these water services, are the water meters being upgraded to the new digital format we have?
That's actually a separate project.
That's okay, but it's going to go hand in hand, not hand in hand, but it's something that'll be coming behind it.
I don't know all the details of that project. Mr. Matthews could probably answer that project, but it is separate.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Member Gomez.
Yes. What is the total fund for the water fund that we currently have?
Are you asking for the total cash in the fund? I don't.
Yes.
Have that figure.
Okay. I'm looking at an expenditure fee, but even though it does state that we have enough, I think as a council member, I don't know if my colleagues agree, I would like to see the running totals, kind of like to see where we're at and what's happening, because that helps us make decisions. And I know it's totally, you guys have like full power, but because I want to represent members to the best of my ability, a running total would allow me to kind of kind of look back and see where the finances are. My next question is, how many stakeholder agencies are involved with strategizing and bringing the CIP projects to fruition?
There aren't any stakeholder agencies per se. The rate plan that is developed for the water rates, this is a water rate funded project, has a 5-year capital improvement plan. And of course, that goes through a public hearing process. It's in a public meeting. And then every year, as part of our budget preparation too, we have a budget workshop and then the budget hearing. So I mean, in that sense, it is public, or, so the public has access to it.
So then my question was pertinent because I remember I saw something Measure I with CIP, and the CIP, I was combining them with SBCTA. So that's, my question is relevant to a different item because I see it's only for Victorville here. That was my final question. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Gomez.
Welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I found the staff report to be somewhat straightforward. This is the last leg of a larger project. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and the chair echoes that sentiment as well. All right, with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to our public hearing. The chair opens the public hearing to receive public testimony. Madam Clerk, are there any in-chambers requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Public comment is closed for the in-chambers requests. Anyone requesting to speak via Zoom?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. Will you please set the timer for 30 seconds in the event that we have a member of Zoom audience wishing to speak, might be experiencing technical difficulties. We certainly want to provide an opportunity for that person to chime in. Yes, sir, you can. Madam Clerk, we stop the timer on that and then we'll pick it up. It's fine, sir. Welcome to our meeting.
Last meeting I came and
It-
it had
um,
been canceled.
Sir, just a quick question. So we're on a public hearing item. Is it related to this item?
No,
Then I can't permit it. We've already closed that.
Okay,
hearing. I'm so sorry, sir.
well, pardon me, I'm just learning these.
Yes, sir. I
procedures.
understand completely.
I'd like to make a motion to allow him to speak. Does anyone second that? The
Member,
motion's on the floor.
Member Gomez does not have the right to do this. I apologize, sir.
We have the right to put a motion on the floor.
Chair facilitates. Chair
Well,
facilitates.
you didn't let him speak and you didn't allow anybody to second it because it would die.
You said the
I'm just trying to facilitate conversation, sir. Unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Member Gomez is out of order.
With a different
herself to
team,
order.
it would totally have gone.
Member Gomez is out of order and will bring herself to order.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk,
See you next time.
mic, please, so that until she brings herself to order. Okay, can you continue with the timing on the clock, Madam Clerk?
Madam Mayor, 30 seconds has lapsed and there are no additional speakers.
All right, with that said, the chair closes the public hearing and brings this item back to the council. Chair invites a motion from the Victorville Water District Board of Directors as to points 3 and 4, and recognizing that we've already taken up points 1 and 2.
Second.
Thank you. We have a first by Mayor Pro Tem Irving, a second by Member Becerra. Moving on to discussion on the pending motion, beginning with the maker, Mayor Pro Tem.
No discussion.
Thank you, Member Becerra.
Discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes, I was looking at the pipeline replacement project and it seems like it took us 7 years before we recognized formally through the water master plan that something of this level should have been captured earlier. And if that's not the case, and if there's clarification, I would greatly appreciate it because sometimes the delineation of time periods, 7 years is too long to find that we need to do a replacement, especially when it's Old Town. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. And again, the discussion is on the pending motion. Chair has no discussion on the pending motion, closes the discussion period. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra, Councilmember Gomez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
So the Victorville Water District Board of Directors has taken action to adopt staff's recommendation as to points 3 and 4 as posted on the agenda. Moving on to public hearing item number 2. This is the proposed updated electric service rules and regulations. Mr. Metzler.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, this item has been withdrawn from the agenda and we'll actually reschedule at a later date and renotice the public hearing that goes along with the item.
All right, thank you, Mr. Metzler. With that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to our consent calendar. Items 3 through 15. At this time, a motion is in order for the council and the council acting in its various capacities on the various boards of directors to approve action on the consent calendar items 3 through 15 in accordance with the recommendations presented on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra.
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the council and its various boards of directors has taken action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda. Moving on to item number 16. This is our business under the written communications category. Mr. Metzler, you read the title and introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Yes, this item number 16 is the Old Town Sidewalk Connectivity Project. And this item particularly is an item that resulting from having received grant funding, particularly TDA Article 3 funding. With the award of those funds, we actually chose through the budget process also to match with Measure I funds. So we have a budget available to actually go out for bid and basically ultimately award the construction of sidewalk connectivity improvements in Old Town. Unfortunately, as we scoped the project and got bids back, the bids came back at a price substantially greater than what's actually provided for in the budget. So with that, you have a staff recommendation effectively that rejects the bids and will rescope the project and come back at a later date.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk, the recommendation.
That the Honorable City Council reject all bids submitted for the Old Town Sidewalk Connectivity Project Phase 1.
Okay. Technical questions for clarification, beginning with Member Becerra.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes, would you please remind the member what number we're on?
Sure, we're on item number 16 under written communication.
Thank you. Is this second phase connected with another resolution that was formally adopted? Yeah, it's a rejection of bids. I understand that.
I'm not sure what you're speaking to as you reference second phase.
Yeah, so we have a lot of Old Town items, at least 2 that I've noticed. So is there a connection with the former item or with any other items, and they create phases for now dealing with the sidewalk portion of it?
No, this is a completely separate item than the previous one or the later ones in the agenda.
And what about any former ones that we've already revisited? That has nothing to do with this one as well?
Not that I can recall, but Mr. Gangler is the author on this item.
We do have 2 grants for Old Town Sidewalk connectivity projects. So this is the first grant, we call it Phase 1, and then there's another grant that we call Phase 2, but we have not brought that forward to City Council yet, the Phase 2 grant. We did have to pass a resolution to basically receive the funds a while back, but we have not come forward with any recommendation to award a contract on Phase 2 yet.
Thank you. Are there any other matching funds available for this item?
Yes.
And we spoke of Article 3 and rejection of the former item. Does that mean, I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by a lot of the movement as I'm speaking. So Becerra giving card out to that distracts me. So just give me a moment.
Sure, Member Gomez.
I appreciate that. So my question was if there was any matching funds for the item, and I didn't hear that.
Yes, there is.
There is. And we also spoke, maybe it's my confusion, I was thinking Article 3, which appears here, and we move rather quickly. So this is Article 3 that we were talking about, the rejection of the bids, correct?
The grant funding is TDA Article 3.
Yes, thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem.
I just have a real basic question. So we're going to reduce the scope of work by eliminating the retaining wall. Is that right?
Well, actually, there's on that section of street, we wouldn't put in anything, no retaining wall, no sidewalk. Right now, there's a dirt path, but it's very expensive. That's the most expensive part of the project.
Okay, so yes. I mean, I'm just reading the staff report. I think I read that.
So we're not planning on doing any
Oh,
construction.
we're not going to do anything. Okay. And that doesn't in any way impact the structural soundness of anything that we're about to embark.
No, it doesn't. It's just that the retaining wall that's there now
Yes,
would make the sidewalk a little too narrow to
got
meet
it.
our standards.
Got it. Thank you very much. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And the chair has none and invites a motion from the council
So moved.
Second.
to adopt staff recommendation.
To adopt that staff's recommendation.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Discussion on the pending motion, Member Becerra. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes, so it's important to be able to follow through what's happening with Old Town. There's a lot of things happening in Old Town and to understand if there's different phases, street lighting, sidewalks, anything of that, because I know the Old Town is not bifurcated, is not piecemealed. So when council members can understand holistically what's happening, we can have better decisions being made. Unfortunately, I felt a little distracted, but I think I'm on board. Thank you.
The chair appreciates that very much, Member Gomez, but we need to make sure that our comments are restricted.
It was Old Town sidewalk connectivity.
Thank you. It was a rejection of the bid was the motion, and the chair has no comments on the pending motion. Closes the discussion period. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra. Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, so the council has taken action in accordance with the recommendation laid out on the agenda. Moving on to item number 17. This is to award 2 general services provider agreements for laboratory testing services. Mr. Metzler, will you tee up the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Yes, this laboratory testing is a responsibility we have as a water district, and actually pumping and treating and ultimately delivering water to our customers or residents or even ratepayers. And this is something we're required to do in pursuant to requirements of Department of Public Health. This is an item that has actually gone through our procurement process where we actually establish a scope of work. We actually bid, receive bids, and then review to determine the successful candidates. As done in the past, we are recommending here to award to 2 vendors so that we have a primary and a backup to basically do the water testing services. So with that, the author on this item is your Director of Public Works and Water, Mr. Doug Matthews. He is available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, the recommendation, please.
That the Honorable Victorville Water District Board of Directors award the general services provider agreements for laboratory testing services, project CC 23-003, in an amount not to exceed $150,000 to Clinical Laboratory of San Bernardino and to Eurofins Eaton Analytical LLC.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we're going to move on to technical questions for clarification as it relates to the staff report and more specifically to the award of the 2 provider agreements. And we're going to begin this time with Member Gomez.
Yes, so 17, what is the purpose here? I'm looking at, there's 2 vendors specifically, so if you can indulge me. I think there's 2.
Yes, so this is to have 2 vendors on board, so we have flexibility in choosing which vendor to send the actual water sample that is taken from the system so that we can actually have the water tested to make sure it's safe to drink.
Okay. Is there a cost mitigation when one's available and when the other one's available? So now I'm giving you an example, for instance, so there's 2 of these vendors. Do we have them both on call? So one's unavailable, we can contribute and hey, can you come in? I just don't understand why 2. I think it's an excessive use of cost, but of course I am not the purveyor. I don't understand.
Well, I certainly don't think it's an excessive use of cost because it's one budget basically to be borne or satisfy the two contractors. But Mr. Matthews knows a little bit more firsthand how when a sample is taken, which vendor is chosen versus the other.
Yeah, like Mr. Metzler said, there's a primary and a secondary, but there are times with availability of staff or even qualified personnel at the labs, or just timing when they can't get the sample and get it tested in time, then it creates a problem for the district. So we would go to the other lab.
Perfect, thank you. As a purveyor, what measures does the city take when ensuring when we're purchasing wholesale water at an affordable cost? So when we pass those costs on to our constituents, that's not only affordable, but pertinent with the cost rates as things go up and higher. What are we doing? Who do we contract? Mojave Water Agency? What do we do?
So the water, the molecule in and of itself is just one component that comprises the ultimate rate to the ratepayer. We do have first what's considered free production allowance, which is basically water rights to pump directly from the ground. But as the basin that we pump from is an adjudicated basin, we also have makeup responsibilities and replacement responsibilities that's actually governed by the water master. When we do have those makeup and or replacement water responsibilities, we do work with MWA to actually have water delivered from the aqueduct effectively into our percolation basins and back into the aquifers so that it can be drawn upon need.
So as a purveyor, we purchase our wholesale water from Mojave Water Agency only.
Correct.
Have we negotiated with any other agencies that are willing to do so? Or is that the least expensive affordability that we can manage?
There are contracted state water contractor.
Okay, Member Gomez, the chair is going to call for the question today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think in part, I have two questions here. I think in Mr. Metzler's overview, you mentioned that this was customary to contract with two providers, correct? Right, and I do appreciate the fact, especially when it comes to drinking water, that we're being proactive. But I want to ask a question just for my own personal edification. Have we ever been near out of compliance, or have we ever been faced with that issue?
The last time I can recall would be back when the districts were separate and there was a boil water notice for Baldy Mesa Water District at a time when they didn't chlorinate their system, they weren't required to. And since that time, they have been required to, so not since that time.
Okay, well, I appreciate the fact that we're being proactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Becerra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Matthews, plain and simple, this is a laboratory that takes a sample of our well water, tests it to make sure for the state of California, it meets within the drinking water requirement laws that we have, correct?
Yeah, all federal and state laws.
Federal and state.
Yes.
And it comes back to at a time so we know it is safe to drink. In other words, you don't get it out of the tap, you get it from the well. So we know before it goes to the tap, it's safe to drink, correct?
Yeah, and just to add to that, there's a 30-something page sampling, monitoring, and reporting plan that's approved for 10 years through the State Water Resources Control Board that we have to follow. And it changes if we have changes in our system, whether it's a new source of water, a different way of disinfecting. So it's very stringently regulated and it's laid out very well of what our requirements are that we need to do.
Thank you very much, sir. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Becerra. And the chair has none. Again, the report was very clear. At this time, the chair invites a motion from the Victorville Water District.
So move to follow staff's recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. We have a first by Member Becerra, a second by Member Gomez. Discussion on the pending motion beginning with Member Becerra.
No discussion.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Absolutely. So we looked at the general service provider agreement for lab testing services. And I felt uncomfortable when the mayor interrupted me with orders of the day was inappropriate. That's my comment.
The chair facilitates the meeting. That again was not discussion.
But you're not a dictator.
Member Gomez, let's move
Fluency
on.
of voice is
All right.
important.
Thank you. And the chair has no discussion on the pending motion, closes the discussion period. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the Victorville Water District Board of Directors has adopted staff's recommendation on that item. Before we move on to our next item, which is, excuse me, item number 18. The chair wishes to make sure, just because we have a lot of new members in the audience and you may not know, chair is charged with presiding over the meetings and facilitating the meetings in accordance with our policies and procedures manuals, which includes following the Brown Act and other state requirements in our city ordinances and so forth. So the purpose of having meeting rules and following parliamentary rules is so that there's a level playing field for every council member. And we need to have that so that we can have meaningful discussions so that we can make the best decisions possible for the entire city of Victorville. Sometimes it's inconvenient. Sometimes I call one member out of order or another. No one ever likes that, but I have to be fair and judicious in the way that I preside over the meetings. So with that said, we're going to move on to item number 18. This is the award of 2 general services provider agreements for water well maintenance and repair. Mr. Metzler, will you tee up the item, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item, you're acting as the Victorville Water District Board of Directors, and this has to do with needing maintenance services in this particular case for our wells. And as you know, as a part of our rate plan, one of the identified expenditures in our rate plan is the maintenance of our water system. And as in the previous item, I articulated that water, replacement water particularly, will come from the aqueduct perk into the ground. We use approximately 34 wells throughout the city to actually extract that water from the ground and basically pump it into reservoirs, above ground reservoirs that effectively pressurize and gravity feed our water delivery system. That way you can get water to the tap in your house. And so to make that system work and be reliable, those wells that we operate, the 34, have to go through a routine maintenance process. So this item has actually gone through the procurement process for the city, where we have a recommended vendor to proceed with to help achieve our maintenance responsibilities for the well system. So with that, the item has been authored by your Director of Public Works and Water, Mr. Doug Matthews. He's available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk.
That the Honorable Victorville Water District Board of Directors award the General Services Provider Agreement for Water Well Maintenance and Repair, Project CC 23-007, in an amount not to exceed $889,000 to Lane Christensen Company and General Pump Company, Inc.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, technical questions for clarification as it relates to the staff report, more specifically on the awarding of the provider agreements. We're going to begin with Mayor Pro Tem Irving this time.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Member Becerra.
Thank you. Mr. Metzler, as you said, 85 to 90% of our water is brought from water wells that we have. All this is an agreement that if something, why would we need to use this agreement?
If routine preventative maintenance is an example on the wells, but I think it does go into more extreme. Perhaps if the well is failing, we have somebody on board to help address a well failure, and maybe Mr. Matthews can explain what that might look like.
Yeah, so certainly, we plan to rehab 1 to 2 wells a year. So that's just basically, pulling everything out of from the ground and having the company go through it, put it back in. We generally choose those based on dropping levels of production. So there's reasons why you would pick a certain well to rehab. You're seeing declining production, higher energy usage, something of that sort. But we do have wells that break and things that happen and issues and noises and certain things. So you may have to replace a motor, you may have to replace a pump, you may have to replace the shaft. There's just various things that could go on. So while you could have one company pulling a well, you could have another well go down that's a important well for you. So you would want the other company to be there. Also, some of these companies are more versed in different types of wells. For instance, the ASR wells, I believe Lane Christensen has more experience with those than General Pump. So we'll use them as needed as far as which well. And we'll look at cost during that.
Okay, and this is something that the water department checks and everything. Like you said, a well goes down. That's something we can't plan for. That's something we can't say, oh yeah, it's gonna go down next week, next month, whatever. So we have enough in the finances for this reason to take care of things like this, correct?
Some are predictive, some aren't, but we make rounds 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Except Christmas.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Member Gomez.
Are 17 and 18 related items to some extent in similarities as in dealing with water?
Yes.
How many water wells are under the city's jurisdiction as opposed to in the city and not under the jurisdiction for purposes of maintenance and repairs?
The number of wells, in fact, I found it right here on page 596. We have 34 active groundwater wells in our system.
So those are within the city and the purview of the jurisdiction?
Those are under our jurisdiction.
Okay, so that there's more than that that are not under our jurisdiction, I presume.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that, no, other agencies have them in their service areas, but we don't have more than that.
Got it. And what does the routine water well maintenance look like? What does it mean to put back? What does it mean to have a decline in production? What does that terminology mean in layman terms?
It just means the well is not as efficient as it was. So it's not producing at its best capacity or optimum level of expenses it takes to run that well. So we're trying to keep our expenses as low as possible. But routine can also mean just pulling the equipment out of the hole because it's time to pull it out of the hole and rehabilitate it.
Okay, let me reframe the question. When I think of a water well, I think of a movie, someone carrying literally a bucket to bring out a water. So if you can break it down more for me, because I still don't understand, I feel there's machinery involved and a lot of technical aspects to it, but I also need to understand how is it that some water level can hit a level where it's contaminant, and when we pull it out the tap, we don't realize unless we keep checking it every hour, every 30 seconds, for instance.
So the concept that you describe is actually a fair concept. But this concept involving a pump is automating what you just described. So if you're speaking from, say, a movie or a cartoon that is dropping a bucket down a big hole, it's similar. There's still that hole, and in this particular case, to actually get to groundwater, we're drilling down probably 100 to 150 feet. It just so happens that the system that we have is automated in the sense that you have an actual pump as opposed to that bucket that's actually sucking through a straw effectively a ton of water. And so speaking to Mr. Matthews' description of the type of thing that would trigger perhaps a need for maintenance, it very well could be that a well, and don't quote me on these numbers because I'll probably have them wrong, but it very well could be that we have a well that's rated to actually pump at a rate of, say, 2,000 gallons per minute. So that's a substantial amount greater than, say, the one bucket. But if, for example, the well is rated for 2,000 gallons a minute, and all of a sudden we're realizing, say, 1,000 gallons a minute, there's something wrong because that well is not operating in its optimal. So that in and of itself gives us at least a clue that something probably needs to be checked, and perhaps there's maintenance associated with that well. Well that needs fixed.
I appreciate that explanation. It helps solidify in my mind what you meant, what it means to me now. Is the million a typical cost? If so, how often and for how many years is this allotted to? Historically, we look at 889,000, that's almost $1 million. I perceive that to be excessively a lot, but of course, I'm not in the business of financing. So please help me understand if that's a typical cost for something like this and how many wells would be addressed.
Well, it's not exactly known how many wells will be addressed because it depends upon the operation throughout the course of a period of time, in this case, a year. But I guess maybe to put things in context, because one might think $889,000 is a lot of money, but our total budget, operating budget for the water district, where are we at?
I'm trying to remember, maybe
Sorry.
25, 35, 25 million, something like that. I don't have, yeah.
But this item is something, I think the most important thing is the budget that we have is a much substantially greater number than that. But the more important thing is that this particular line item is something that is actually included in the rate plan and is supported by actual rates that we charge ratepayers for the deliver of water to whatever their consumptive purpose is.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Right, so I'm going to speak very briefly while I can. Is it fair to say that this is a normal way of doing business? I mean, I know I'm on the Victor Valley Wastewater Reclamation Authority. We do this with a number of vendors to make sure that we're on top of things in the event that something hopefully not unanticipated happens, that we're ready to go.
It is pulling a well, a pump out from 500-600 feet in the ground, 20 feet at a time, and uncoupling it and doing it over and over and over, and then fixing it and then reinstalling it. These are $2 million investments. And so this is spread over the whole year out of all the wells. So it certainly is normal. And we base this on our historic expenses as well.
Right. And then this is almost a sacred duty that the city has to protect public health and safety. So we're doing the right thing here, correct?
Absolutely.
I mean, every penny has value to all of our citizens.
And to protect our asset.
Yes, of course. All right. With that said, the chair has no further questions and invites a motion from the Victorville Water District.
I'd like to make that motion as recommended by staff.
You wish to move staff's recommendation? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. We have a first and a second. We're going to take discussion on the pending motion, beginning with Member Gomez.
Yes, absolutely. So as you stated, Mayor Jones, it's important to understand the value of the penny, as well as understanding that the pockets of many of our members are very important because they are the taxpayers that have to contribute enormously for something like this. So I appreciate that there's at least some length of clarification, not as much as I think we should through workshops. That's my final comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. All right, Member Tim Irving. Excuse me, Member. Yes, Member Tim Irving.
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Becerra.
No comments.
Thank you. The chair has no comments on the pending motion. I close the discussion period. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Member Becerra.
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the Victorville Water District Board of Directors has taken action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda. Moving on to item number 19. This is 2 loan agreements between the successor agency. Mr. Metzler, will you read the title of the item and then introduce it for me, please? Will you do me that honor?
Yes, the subject on this item is 2 loan agreements between the successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency and the Victorville Housing Successor Agency to repay amounts borrowed by the Victor Valley Economic Development Authority. And then, I'm sorry, you asked for the recommendation as well?
No, just the title and the teeing up of the item.
Yes, so Madam Mayor and members of the council, this item is effectively following guidance that we received from the Department of Finance when we last submitted these items, previously approved by the Victor Valley Economic Development Authority. And these effectively involve old loan transactions that were entered into when we were in the business of conducting redevelopment as a redevelopment agency. And back then there was 2 loans that existed, both funded from the housing fund, which with these items ultimately getting paid from the Victorville Successor Agency, these repayments then could go to the Housing Successor Agency, which then could make funds available for affordable housing projects once they're completely paid back. So effectively, this item is just recasting the participants based upon guidance that the Department of Finance sent to us. So with that, the author on this item is your Deputy City Manager, Ms. Sophie Smith. She's available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Messler. All right, Madam Clerk, the recommendation, please.
That the successor agency board adopt resolution number RSA 22-006, finding that the original loans were for legitimate redevelopment purposes and approving both loan agreements.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, questions for clarification as it relates to the staff report. We're going to begin this time with Member Becerra.
No, Mrs. Smith, very well put together, very easy to understand being a first-year council member. So thank you very much for the wording and everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Absolutely. So there was 2 loan agreements between the successor agency to the city of Victorville, or I'm sorry, the Victorville. It's in the title to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency and the Victorville Housing Successor Agency to repay certain amounts by VITA. Help me understand the power or the authority of VITA, who sits there, who negotiates, and how can VITA ask for a loan with the standard ways of how it's doing today in this item?
Well, VITA is not asking for a loan. In fact, this item was originally acted upon by VITA, which you asked who that is. VITA is the Victor Valley Economic Development Authority. It's a joint powers authority that comprises members from different jurisdictions. We as Victorville actually hold a seat on that organization. But it had in a previous ROPS cycle, and I say ROPS, that's the Recognized Obligation Payment Schedule, basically serving as the dissolution platform for former redevelopment agencies. But this item was previously considered and approved at the VITA level, but Department of Finance is chosen for reasons of its own to advise that instead that agreement should instead be considered a former Victorville Redevelopment Agency loan and therefore get paid back through the Victorville successor agency process.
So those last statements that you meant, so the RDA is asking to be repaid through VITA? Is that what you said?
No.
What did you just say then?
This loan is being recasted to have the Victorville successor agency, which is the successor to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, to take over these loans and effectively pay back the housing asset successor.
So when there is a loan and there's a word to repay, there is subsequently some kind of loan, right? That's what my perception is with the word loan and repayment.
Correct. This item is involving 2 loans, one in the amount of $5 million and the other in the amount of 3.75.
Okay. So it was my understanding that the redevelopment agency a couple of years was dissolved, but I believe maybe this item has to do with the continuance of really dissolving it permanently in other aspects. I may not have the correct terminology, but I am definitely trying to understand why VITA borrowed and now is asking to be repaid, because I believe VITA is an extension of the city of Victorville, but it has its own type of corporation or LLC or any business, its own business structure.
So the redevelopment agencies were dissolved back in 2012, and locally before they were dissolved, we as the city of Victorville had our own redevelopment agency called the Victorville Redevelopment Agency. The separate organization that was initially charged with being the local reuse authority for the closure of George Air Force Base, VITA, Victor Valley Economic Development Authority, was formed by a variety of redevelopment agencies, including that for the city of Victorville. But they're 2 separate and distinct organizations. The liabilities of one are not supposed to be the liabilities of the other. But this item, particularly that we're dealing with here, is effectively helping satisfy the eventual wind down of the former redevelopment activities. So when the redevelopment agencies were dissolved, there were still obligations, debts that had to be not only recognized, but paid. The state did not have the authority to wipe out debts. And so we continue on an annual basis still, even to this day, and this is a part of that, to where
we're effectively trying to, through the collection of what was once called tax increment, collect those property tax revenues and satisfy the debt obligations of the former redevelopment agency.
Okay, where does the satisfaction of the debt come from?
It's ultimately paid from property taxes.
Okay, and how close are we in resolving this loan?
Well, my understanding is that in both of these cases, the entire principal amounts are owed. They may even have interest. And I think I would say, I can't say how close we are, but what I can tell you is that these remain outstanding until such a time as they finally get recognized officially by the Department of Finance and approved. Once they're approved at that level, then monies that are collected at the local level and can be used to pay these off.
So we don't have a time period, right?
I don't at this time.
So we don't know if it's 10, 20, 40, 60 years. That's just not even in the discussion.
I can tell you if the Department of Finance actually approves this when we send it back to them, there's no reason why it should be 10 years. I would estimate 5 years. That's my estimate, but it's not going to be longer than 10 years. I wouldn't expect.
That really, when you say Department of Finance, you're talking about Victorville Division?
State of California.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem.
No, I don't have any questions. I think, Mr. Metzler, I think you and I had a detailed conversation about this a few months ago. So I recall. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And the chair has none. By motion from the successor agency to the redevelopment agency.
So move to follow staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. We have a first and a second. We're not going to move into discussion on the pending motion, beginning with Member Becerra.
No discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes, absolutely. It's not very easy to understand within 3 minutes the structure of what is going on. So I appreciate any level of understanding why I have difficulty comprehending. Even being here 6 years and sitting, if I sat every hour, I would have to be a part of what's taking place. So thank you for that explanation, Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Member Gomez. And the chair has no comment on the pending motion. Closes the discussion period. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra. Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the successor agency to the redevelopment agency has taken action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda. We're now going to move on to item number 20. This is Measure I, your capital improvement plan. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. A fairly routine item and a requirement of SBCTA relative to being able to actually receive our Measure I revenues, which are required to be used on road-related improvements. We have to submit regularly the actual capital improvement plan to help justify actual expenditures sufficient to actually draw down the Measure I revenues. So this is satisfying. This item is actually satisfying SBCTA's requirement. And so with that, the item was authored by your city engineer, Mr. Brian Gengler. He's available for any questions or comments you might have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, the recommendation.
That the Honorable City Council adopt resolution number 22-093, approving the Measure I 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2022, 2023 through 2026, 2027. Add the La Mesa Road project to the Measure I 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2021, 2022 for an expense of $50,437.54.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Technical questions for clarification, beginning with Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I think Mr. Metzler just addressed it. This is pretty routine if we're going to receive the Measure I funds, correct? Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Becerra.
Thank you. Mr. Gengler, very well put together, but Mr. Metzler, what I noticed in this thing, one plus one don't add up to 2.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we don't have enough money in our Measure I monies to cover all of our roadway expenses, correct?
That is an ongoing issue. If we've got 450 to 500 lane miles of road in the city, there is a challenge keeping up with the maintenance needs for all of the roads. So Measure I is definitely a strained fund.
Even the gas tax is a strange fund, correct?
As well.
And everything we're meeting, both with Measure I and gas tax funds for our expenditures, we're meeting what we need to meet with, correct?
Correct. And typically we'll use these funds to leverage other funds, whether they be state or federal funds.
Okay. Is staff working on identifying sources to help us with our needs?
We are.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you very much on this. Thank you, Mr. Gaylor.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Member Gomez.
Yeah, there was a statement made that I would like clarification if it's possible. What does Senate Bill 1 have to do with the Measure I local pass-through program that we're discussing today? If there's a connection, I'd like to understand it better. There may be, I'm just not aware of it.
Well, SB1 is a dedicated funding source that the state approved, basically to help enhance ability to basically undertake road maintenance.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Does the city host workshops to elicit the opinions of all council members to contribute to the capital improvement plan, whether it's at the city or at the SBCT level?
Certainly through the budget process, we do that. But the capital improvement capital improvement plan is something that's largely led by your city engineer. Has traditionally been led by your city engineer because of the complex technical nature of what goes into identifying maintenance needs, but then also prioritizing actual repairs.
Thank you. So since Brian Gengler has a tough job, complicated, I presume, as you've stated, I've looked at several projects here, and what goes into that decision-making process, because I see a lot of projects that, I mean, the constituents, members that are in the public route would like to understand further as myself, like 7th Street, D Street to Forest Avenue improvements, Amargosa Seneca Road to Village Drive pavement rehab. I mean, it's a litany, it's a large list that I just, I'm looking at Roy Rogers, Ridgecrest, Old Town Sidewalk, which we just discussed, 7th Street and Nisqually, Bear Valley pavement rehab. Do all of these, what is the common theme that all of these have besides Measure I and making sure that our roads are to a certain degree paved with safety concern in mind from our residents?
What common theme?
Yes.
Other than what you articulate? I mean, they are all existing roadways. They all have different lives attached to them. I think it might be helpful for Mr. Gengler, our city engineer, to perhaps talk through PCI, which is typically an index used and assigned to our roadway system, so that we have a sense of when certain roadways need certain levels of maintenance attention.
Yes, thank you. So we have a pavement management report that gets updated from time to time. And every street segment has a condition rating. It's called the Pavement Condition Index. So it gets a number from 0 to 100. 0 is completely failed and 100 is perfect. And so we use that data to help prioritize our street projects. For our streets that have higher traffic volumes, our collector streets and our arterial roads, we use a benefit cost formula. And we use that formula to rank the streets and compare them one to the other. So the arterial roads that you're seeing on this list are the highest ranked streets. For basically, you get the most bang for the buck. High volume roads like Bear Valley Road and other arterials, where we have a project planned and it would have a significant improvement in the pavement condition, that's going to get a higher benefit cost number. So that's how we rank our arterial and collector roads. And then you'll notice that every year or almost every year, we have a slurry seal pavement rehab project, and we go in and we will patch, crack seal, slurry seal, maybe have a few overlays. And we've done that in several areas. And this next target area is the civic area. And that is also, we also use the pavement management report for that. We don't use the benefit cost per se, because it'd be too complicated to try to do that for every single street. But anyway, that's how we prioritize our streets. And I will say this, that our needs far outweigh the available funding. So we try to get the most bang for the buck, so to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation thoroughly. The next question I have is, do we have our individuals who represent us at those levels? I'm sure one of them is you because I've seen your memos, but members that can basically say, hey, you know what, the city may qualify for this, or do we heavily rely on you as your expert in this matter?
Well, we always keep an eye out for grant opportunities. Unfortunately, there aren't the kind of grants that we need for our bread and butter street I'm mincing my words, street rehabilitation projects. We have gotten grants for projects like 7th Avenue, Arrowhead. But that was more for adding sidewalks, bike lanes and such.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I was about to say, doesn't a rehab project include sidewalks? But it looks like everything is divvied just to perfection, and that's why we have you here. I appreciate your explanation, Mr. Gengler. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
You're welcome.
All right, and just a quick question or two while my voice permits. So we have on our CIPs, we have priorities set based on just a logical and a very, really almost a scientific view of what's happening. But sometimes those priorities can change, can't they, under certain circumstances?
They can, and so we listen very closely to our public works maintenance staff. As an example, 3rd Avenue was moved up in priority a few years ago because it was becoming more of a maintenance issue. There were potholes and some of the pavement was basically getting loose. And so public works staff asked if we could advance that in the plan. And so we did, because it was becoming a maintenance problem.
Okay, so the CIP really is a blueprint to go forward, but sometimes for public safety and other reasons, we have to shift it,
Yes.
right? And so I know that that's personally been hard for some of my neighbors because we were shifted at one point, and I'm sure for other parts of our region. But I think once they understand that there might be an area that is in greater need of immediate attention, we're certainly quick to understand. All right, with that said, the chair has no further questions and invites a motion from the council.
I'd like to be able to move the staff recommendation as a motion.
Thank you. All right, we have a first by Member Gomez, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Irving. Discussion on the pending motion, Member Gomez.
Yeah, absolutely. So I understand that there's a lot of issues that are going on, but I appreciate the level of letting us know what key terms we can use. So if one of the members comes up and says, hey, our street, we can look at that formulaically and go back to this this rendition that you provided, Mr. Gengler. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
No.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Thank you. The chair has no comment on the pending motion. Closes the discussion period. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra, Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, so the council has taken action to adopt staff recommendation pursuant to what's presented on the agenda. At this time, my colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break until 8 p.m. so we can all stretch our legs a little bit. We're I don't think too much further to get our agenda completed this evening, but we're going to reconvene at 8 p.m. To the gentleman who wished to speak in public comments, would you like to All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to resume the meeting. All right, we're resuming the meeting. The time is 8 p.m. We're now going to take up item number 21. And thank you, Madam Clerk, for requesting a break. It seemed that we all needed it. So item number 21 is Master Rich Assistance Payment number 8, Mala Victor Valley Development Agreement. Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item is something we do annually and have done it since about 2013 and results from a development agreement that was entered into back in 2011, 2012, effectively to help facilitate the mall from at the time going into absolute disrepair and giving it an opportunity to redevelop, reposition its tenancies and live a longer life. And certainly we believe it's done that with its existing tenancies. That development agreement effectively established a sales tax sharing relationship between the city and the mall, to where the very basic terms are that for a period of up to 28 years, we as a city will receive the first $1 million of sales tax. And for everything after the first $1 million of sales tax, then we provide or cut a check to the actual mall owner. And in this particular case, that check that's being cut to the mall owner is $466,859, meaning that we've achieved at least the baseline threshold for the city to achieve its first $1 million. That amount that actually gets paid to the mall developer effectively reduces the principal balance owing that was effectively capitalized as a loan. So with that, the author on this item is your finance director, Mr. John Mendiola. He's available for any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler. Madam Clerk, the recommendation, please.
That your honorable city council authorizes assistance payment as provided for in the development agreement with Mace Rich Victor Valley LLC in the amount of $466,859 for calendar year 2021, and approve resolution number 22-095, authorizing an additional appropriation for the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget in the amount of $366,859.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, technical questions for clarification as to the staff report. We're going to begin with Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Mr. Metzler, I want to say thank you for allowing me, spending time with me to explain this item in detail. And I just want to make sure that I fully understand the additional monies that we're going to appropriate for the 2021-2022 budget in the amount of, what is it, 366,000 roughly, is to make sure we meet the conditions of our agreement, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And just to expand on it, just for the benefit of the audience that may not be familiar, the recommendation does contain the two items. One, the cutting of the check of the $466,000. In this budget, we did not expect when we prepared the budget that they would achieve that amount of sales. And in fact, to help support that, last year, as an example, and we inserted that chart on page 827, largely because in 2020, they didn't achieve the $1 million baseline. In fact, we cut them a check of zero. So we estimated low in this budget, and so effectively this particular item, the 366,000 that you speak of, that's just an additional appropriation to the budget, so that when we cut the check actually matches the budget.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Becerra.
Mr. Metzler, what I did read is it's 18 million or 2028, correct?
Whichever happens first.
Whichever happens first. Where are we at towards the 18 million? Do we think we're gonna make it to 2028 or no, we're gonna make the 18 million first?
Unless something changes, my view is that we'll get to the 28 years before, and effectively this agreement will expire before they achieve the 18.9. To date, we've paid about $2 million.
Okay. And this has worked for both parties, correct? This has helped keep our mall, our mall here in the Victor Valley, and has helped them out tremendously.
It has, and in fact, remembering and being a part of the team that originally structured this transaction, there was a view, and especially just having come out of the recession of 2008, there was some legitimate concerns back then that the mall could actually go into disrepair, so much so that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to recover from. So this was effectively a stop the bleed approach and give new life into the mall for them to continue to succeed.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Becerra. Member Gomez.
Yes, how often does the city of Victorville jump or get into something very similar with other types of corporations to, sort of stop that bleeding from going on?
Well, when we were in the world of redevelopment or in the business of redevelopment, we negotiated transactions, not exactly like this, but we negotiated transactions routinely to help facilitate economic development throughout our city. Even though, and in fact, I think it's a large reason why this transaction was structured the way it was because in 2012, redevelopment was abolished and we basically were absent any meaningful tools to continue to facilitate economic development, redevelopment. So basically the city used its experience and skills from the redevelopment days and basically structured a transaction like this as a city to help facilitate economic development at the mall.
And in 2007, why didn't we think about using something similar by using the redevelopment transaction rather than what we currently have with this mall, that we've done something very different?
Well, this transaction was entered into in 2012. In fact, July. I think the actual dissolution occurred maybe less than 30 days before we actually took this item before the council. So you didn't have the redevelopment tool at your disposal, basically, to use redevelopment as opposed to this.
And so for the sake of understanding, so I'm paying out $1 and I'm receiving 40 cents. How does that make sense to the typical business agency that's using general fund dollars? Can you help me understand that?
No, because I don't exactly understand your characterization, but what I can tell you is that the way this was structured is to actually require of all of the sales tax generated by the mall. For all that's generated by the mall, we get to keep the first $1 million. And we did that mainly to be able to still be able to generate revenue for our general fund so that we can provide the public safety services that are required in connection with having a retail operation like that in your community.
So if they don't make the $1 million mark, we don't get paid? Is that what you just said?
If the $1 million mark isn't achieved, like it wasn't achieved in 2020, we will get paid. We will get paid everything up to effectively the $1 million. I don't know how much they fell short of the 1 million, but we got paid at least whatever sales tax was generated from the mall. What it meant in that particular year was that they did not, as the mall, realize a sharing, if you will.
How much of the general fund dollars are allotted for the mall in the last, I suppose it's 15 years, but you said 2012, so it's much shorter.
All that's been paid out to date since this transaction's been in place is about $2 million.
How much do we anticipate just alone in, I suppose there's some kind of varied or not fixed, not credits, but interests? Have we accounted for anything like that?
We don't pay interest on this money.
No, not us, right? But we're receiving money from them and it gets taxed or it gets based on inflation and the market rate, depending on the consumer, what they purchase, the pricing, the allotment of the market, things of that nature. So the reason I'm asking for that is because this is it's over a decade that we expect, and it's $28 million. So I wanted to kind of understand, what are we looking at? Because it doesn't seem promising to be helping a corporation when we're not extending the same level to smaller businesses, because maybe I don't know that they have that advantage with the city of Victorville. They can negotiate something like that with Victorville, because that's, it's extended to everyone, not just the mall of Victorville.
So it's not $28 million, it's 18.9. It's a 28-year arrangement. And I think maybe it'd be helpful for you to understand how sales tax works. And so there's no concept of interest in this case because it's not the mall paying us money. This money is all derived from taxable sales. And in fact, there are a number of small businesses that operate in the mall and likely operate in the mall because there is a mall. And absent the transaction that we entered into, it's likely there was a belief back then that there may not be a mall if we didn't do this transaction. So I do believe this transaction provides opportunity even to small business, not just the big anchors that you see there at the mall. But the way the sales tax system works is for every dollar that's transacted, every recorded sale that's at the register, there's a sales tax component. And currently in Victorville, it's now 8.75%. But all of those sales taxes that are collected, they're collected by the businesses, the individual businesses. So whether it's Macy's or whether it's Bed Bath and Beyond, whatever the retailer is that's actually operating in the mall, all of that gets transmitted to the State Department of Tax and Fee Administration. And once it gets submitted to the State Department of Tax and Fee Administration, then our 1% share is actually transmitted to us. And from those amounts that are actually transmitted to us from the state of California, we do a calculation to determine how much do we get to keep pursuant to this agreement, and how much do we have to pass through to the actual mall themselves. And in this particular case, given this last exercise, it's $466,000.
Is this a viable pass-through for any other business?
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Excuse me. All right, and the chair has no questions as it relates to this item and invites a motion from the council.
So moved to follow staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Discussion on the pending motion, Member Becerra.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Discussion.
Thank you, Member Gomez.
Yes, I'm glad Mr. Messler talked about the businesses from within. I had a lengthy visit with many businesses who unfortunately lost their placement and there were affected.
Member Gomez,
So when
discussion
you
on the pending
asked
motion.
questions about how this functions, it was very pertinent for me to understand that you had also considered that the businesses in there somehow were keeping their businesses. And in fact, many of them lost their business. Thank you. No further questions or comments.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Chair has no discussion. Closes. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra, Councilmember Gomez.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez voting no.
Thank you. All right. So the council has taken action in accordance with the recommendation posted on the agenda. We're now going to move on to item number 22. And in as much as items 22 through 25 have everything to do with moving the Wellness Center to phase 2 and then to completion, the chair invites a motion to consider those items concurrently.
So moved. Oh, second.
Thank you. We have a first by Member Becerra, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Irving. Discussion on the pending motion.
No discussion.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm waiting for you to call.
Yes, go ahead.
Absolutely. When we enable this, we cut off time for the understanding of questioning, and that's what I just would like you to know and for the record to reflect. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem.
No discussion. Thank you.
Okay. And the chair wishes to make it very clear that each council member has an opportunity before we come to our meeting to do an agenda preparation. with city staff. And so we do come prepared to these meetings in most situations. So with that said, the discussion.
Objection or prejudice, I've never had that
Member Gomez. this is
opportunity
point of
with
order.
as.
Madam
So
Clerk,
it's wrong.
Councilmember Becerra. Councilmember Gomez, Mayor Pro Tem Irving, Mayor Jones.
Mr.
Aye.
Messer, let me
Motion
know when
passes.
available so I can
Member
go.
Gomez is out of order and will suspend.
Mr. Messer, when you're ready.
Member Gomez is out of order and will suspend.
Years I haven't been able, last 4 years I
Madam
haven't.
Clerk, will you mute your member's mic? Thank you. So Member Gomez, you are out of order. Member Gomez has been given opportunities. Moving on, we're now going to consider items 22 through 25 concurrently. I'll read the titles on each respectively, and then Mr. Metzler, I'll ask you to introduce those. And then Madam Clerk, when it's your turn to read the recommendation, if you would do those in respective order, it would be appreciated. All right, so the title of item 22 is the Wellness Center Project, the grant of easement to Southern California Edison. Item 23, Southern California Edison as, thank you. Item 23 is the Wellness Center Network and Telecommunications Equipment Order. 24 is the Wellness Center Purchase of Sewer Lift Station. Item 25 is the Wellness Center Project Award Construction Contract Work Order for Phase 2. Mr. Metzler, will you tee up those items?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. And if you'll just indulge me for 2 seconds, because to move this project along, certainly to where we're at today and where we're going, it's been a monumental effort and it's required a monumental team to get us there. I'd like first to introduce our newest member of the organization, Mr. Mazharul Islam. He's our Director of Information Technology. I'm sorry, that's an old title. It's Technology Officer. I've been around for a while. I use the old title. Sorry, Mazharul. But he's certainly here to help us along with the technology item. We have a few folks here from Gordian, representing the Sourcewell related contract that you're familiar with. We have Tomiko Gutierrez, area manager. I believe Tomiko's here in person. We also have Mr. Randy Horn, regional director here in person. We also have Jay Kwan in the back there in person. And we also have Young King, I believe via Zoom. And so first I wanted to bring attention to those individuals to the extent there's any technical questions or comments you might have that I can't answer. Certainly, I'm going to rely on the team to help talk through some of those. But as you'll know, we've been underway with the ultimate build out of our wellness and recuperative care center in Old Town, which is 110 separate units, ultimately creating 170 beds for our homeless population. And as of this date, we've awarded the phase 1 contract, which effectively has been the on-site grading, an extensive amount of utility work. Had some surprises out in the field, especially as we didn't expect to run into groundwater as quickly as we did. But we've got our arms around that. We're finally pressing forward. This council has also seen items dealing with contracts for the modular units, both in the form of the bathrooms, the community room, along with the actual living units. And we've made tremendous amount of progress as all of those modulars have been under construction and are nearing the stage where they're in a position to deliver. And so with that is this final phase 2, which is effectively now dealing with, I would characterize largely the vertical site improvement related stuff. So that's going to be your roadways, your curbs, your landscaping, your fencing, things of that nature that are effectively going to help build the rest of the site. So once the modulars are actually laid down on their foundations.
Member Gomez has not been recognized by the chair. Okay, so Member Gomez, a point of privilege would be helpful on that. You have to be recognized by the chair. Okay, so thank you. Right.
Okay, well, so what I needed to say.
No, Member Gomez, back up. Would you like to be recognized?
Trying to say.
You didn't do that.
What did I do?
I could hear you without the mic. You didn't ask to be recognized by the chair.
He's talking of several objects and I want to know, is it 22?
Point of privilege or
24.
Mayor, you have to get my attention. Don't just.
It's
speak direct.
muted. So if I can't get your attention.
I could hear you.
Okay, so that's what I was asking.
So Member Gomez is being recognized. So Mr. Messer, are you speaking to each item or in just the whole concept?
I'm speaking in general to all of the items as we bundle them together.
Yeah. Thank you. You can continue, please, Mr. Metzger. We appreciate it.
So with that, these items are dealing with the civil work. They're also dealing with the independent contracts for telecommunications so that we have both phone and internet services available at the site for the conducting of business, also to provide to our residents. Also, the easement, the Southern California Edison easement is effectively a real estate tool necessary to be able to allow Edison to have a system constructed onto the site so they can access it in needs of being able to maintain it. So with that, this item is expected to bring the project to finish upon approval tonight. We do have some additional appropriations to this item, which are actually laid out in the staff report. The total estimated project budget in aggregate is about 35.6 million is where we're currently at. One thing that we're doing, because there have been unexpected costs increase, just given the nature of the way this project was bid and built, is to mitigate the risk associated with relying on Measure P for the match. And that's how we had adopted our budget. We're effectively shifting the funding of this program to rely first on our Home Key Award, which was the $28 million. You'll remember, but we're also shifting out or swapping out, I should say, Measure P with the ARPA money that we received from the federal government, so as to reduce the risk to the Measure P fund. So with that, the author on this item is Mr. Brian Gangler. He's available for any technical questions or comments regarding these items.
All right, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, can you please read the recommendations?
Item 22, recommendations. Staff recommends that the Honorable City Council grant an easement to Southern California Edison as described in the attached documents and authorize the city engineer to make minor revisions to the document if required. Item 23, that the Honorable City Council award the purchase of on-site network and telecommunication hardware, software, and installation services to Logicalis, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $301,198.75 for the Wellness Center located at 16902 First Street, and authorize the city manager to execute any documents related to this transaction. Item 24, that the Honorable City Council approve a general service provider agreement with ROM Tech Utilities for the purchase, manufacturing, and delivery of the sewer lift station for the Wellness Center in an amount not to exceed $292,277.88. Item number 25, that the Honorable City Council approve a construction contract work order with Angelus Contractors, Inc. for the Phase 2 construction of the Wellness Center project in an amount not to exceed $15,427,974.88.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, moving on to technical questions for clarification as it relates to the staff reports on items 22 through 25. Member Becerra, we're going to begin with you.
Thank you. Mr. Metzler, let's go one by one and let's break it down to as easy as we can. Number 22 is SCE. Basically, we're giving them permission to come on board so we could have electricity so they can have heat in the summer, in the winter, cool in the summer, and have outlets to plug their free phones in, correct?
That's correct.
Let's go to 23, network to communication. Basically, they can have free Wi-Fi for our homeless people, correct?
And we'll also have internet service for our actual administration of the center.
Thank you. Sewer lift station, so they'll have toilets and running water to be able to take showers every day if they want.
This is basically to collect and convey all of our sewage discharge from the site back into the nearby interceptor. And I think it's important to recognize that this wasn't originally envisioned as a part of the original design. In fact, we had to redesign resulting from experiencing the water event that we did on site. We actually had to redesign a number of the civil drawings, including the utilities. And so this was an item that was actually designed in. But effectively, what will happen is all of the on-site sewage collection will discharge to this lift station, and this lift station will pump that sewage into the interceptor.
But this lift station is only for at the point for the homeless shelter or the wellness center. I'm sorry, the wellness.
Correct. And I misspoke by saying it's going to go into the interceptor. It's actually being lifted into a nearby collector.
Okay. And then number 25, to finish out the project, we're already at this point. We can't back out from it now because we'd be left with an open area of pods, correct? This money in 25 is needed to finish out phase 1 and 2 of the project.
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you. All right, Member Gomez.
Has the city council been provided a run and tally of the expenses that the outset are being expended, thinking about ARPA funds, what was wired, what do we have currently available?
Well, we have in the sense that you see the commercial demand. We have not been asked, so we have not provided a summary of accounting. We certainly can if so desired by the council.
So you don't have a figure? You don't know? Is that what you meant?
We know, I don't know at this moment. I'd have to have actually pull the information from the system, but we do have an accounting in the system of what's been spent.
Thank you. And can non-homeless tenants utilize the services like restroom, charging stations, a cooling stage room, and other services? Yes or no?
I believe the operation is going to be restricted to staff and actual residents of the center.
And where on the documents on items 22 to 25 is it written that we have relieved Measure P and instead we'll tap into other funds like ARPA and Home Key?
That's probably better summarized on item number 25.
You have the page that I can kind of pull quickly?
Item number 25 starts on page 953.
Okay, so if I don't find that and you find it, I wouldn't mind you providing that information.
It's in the fiscal impact section.
So it does say that we're relieving Measure P.
Yes.
Thank you. And for the $15 million to the contractors of Los Angeles, do we know if they're subcontracting out their services?
I don't, but maybe Ms. Davidson or Mr. Gangler. And if not Mr. Gangler, then perhaps somebody from Angeles.
Yes, they will be subcontracting out some of the work. They being the general contractor, there's different trades where they will use subcontractors.
Do we have something in writing where those some subcontractees will be paid? There's all these terms with wages in state of California that are amenable to what we have to have, federal wages. I think it's called the bacon. There's some strategy behind that. Do we know, are we the oversight board to ensure that all this will be enabled when they, have a subcontractor, or do we have no clue? It's off our hands. They're going to do whatever they need to do, and we won't know unless we pull records.
That was addressed in the contract. It's a state prevailing wage requirement. Although in this case, the federal Davis-Bacon wages do not have to be imposed, but they do have to meet the state prevailing wage requirement.
Thank you. And I saw a lot of documents that said the word draft, and I wanted to know if that draft would be modified after a potential vote in tonight's vote, or is that the final draft and we don't have to worry about any modifications thereafter?
Are you referring to item number 25?
I just know that there's something in there that, so you know what? It's item 23 as a draft. It says draft on it, a watermark.
Yes, so that's the SCE easement, and it should be in final form. However, we're doing the final checking on that, and there might be minor revisions to it.
If there's mild revisions, is that going to require council, or do we have a clause in there that allows two members from, employees to bypass and make what they need to do.
No, I can approve the minor revisions.
Okay. Will the cost be disseminated? We're talking about the wellness center for the sewer. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Gingler. My questions really center on item number 23. It's my understanding that we are purchasing network and telecommunications equipment at this time, even though we haven't broke ground for we haven't begun phase 2. We haven't even awarded phase 2. But the reason we're doing this is because of the global supply chain difficulties. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'm answering this even though it's not my item, but I am aware that there's a long lead time.
Okay,
For any other specific questions, I'd probably defer to the
okay,
IT officer.
okay. Well, my question is, will we have this equipment before completion?
I believe so, yes.
Where are we gonna house it or store it?
Well, I think I will defer the question to the
Hi,
expert
Mr.
on
Islam.
this.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and the council member. In terms of storage, it will be stored in our facilities. And to your earlier questions, yes.
Where is that?
In our IT department.
Okay.
So we have adequate space for.
Is this gentleman with us now? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I heard you were on the team, but I was trying to put
He
it on.
is, and welcome.
Well, welcome to you. Okay, so we're gonna store it here. Okay,
Yes.
okay,
And yes, the reason why we are attempting to get this approved now is because of the supply shortages. So that way our vendor can ship those as early as possible.
right.
So
That was stated explicitly, so I understood that. My next question is really for Mr. Gingler. I'm always gonna ask this question. Are we on schedule? And what's our estimated date for completion?
Well, actually, unfortunately, we have fallen behind schedule.
Oh,
And
okay.
the original completion date in the grant was December 15th. But there have been a number of delays for various reasons. And so the current schedule is a completion date of May 18th in 2023.
Oh, okay.
And so I know that Mr. Webb will be applying for an extension on the
Okay.
grant. And we are doing everything we can to accelerate the construction. But right now on the schedule that it is actually May 18th.
Thank you, Mr. Gingler. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Okay.
If I might, Madam Mayor, just to expand on the storage question of where items are being stored. The answer on the technology one is a fairly easy one because we can house that here, but actually your question's a really good one and was a difficult question to answer. It was one of our challenges. As you know, we've actually advanced purchase basically the modular units. So the actual living units are nearing completion down in the San Bernardino facility. So one of the things that we did have to work out is where are we going to actually store these modular units because they're running out of space down at the manufacturing facility. So that was an issue we ran into, and the ultimate answer was we worked out an arrangement at the airport to be able to accommodate the receipt of those until the actual pads can be built to where we actually set those down.
I asked that question last time. I remember. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Metzler. Okay, Mr. Metzler, so we're applying for, I know that state grant is very strict. And I know that we had a very tight timeline to complete all of this. What happens if we don't get an extension?
Well, I don't necessarily see that as an
I don't either, but I have to ask.
We do have the money. They have cut us the entire $28 million check. We actually have all of the cash on hand for this project. They can attempt to claw back. We'll certainly fight that vociferously as strongly as we can. But I do think we certainly have a strong story to tell. It's not that we're certainly satisfying all the intents. And we have a pretty good story to tell. We ran into some surprises, but it's not like we're sitting around doing nothing.
And we've acted in good faith all the way through.
Absolutely.
All right. And then with regard to item 24, the purchase of the sewer lift station. It's not going into the interceptor. It's going to another collection area. Where is that?
So we have an existing sewer line in River Street. That's not the main access for the wellness center, but there will be an emergency access there. So it'll be pumped out to our collection system in River Street.
Okay, and then we've installed the additional pipe for VVWRA. We worked that out, so we have the capacity for future use there. Okay.
Yep.
All right, those are all of my questions. And the chair invites a motion from the council.
Madam Mayor, I motion we approve items 22, 23, 24, 25 to follow staff's recommendation.
Thank you. The chair is going to second this. Moving on to discussion on the pending motion. We're going to begin with Member Becerra.
Job well done by everybody involved right now to get us to this point.
Thank you. I'm going to hold my comments until last. Member Gomez.
Absolutely. I always take issue. We have so much money on hand, and a lot of times people want to speed everything up. And when you speed stuff, things go wrong. You don't pay the appropriate wages. There's a lot of things that go wrong in issues like this. Just because we have $28 million doesn't mean just hurry up. It means you already knew the first time you had 16 millions and you had to retract. Now you need to get 28 millions, and everything done hurriedly. There's something bound to happen that later on, who's going to suffer? Not only taxpayers through their dollars, but the very vulnerable populations that we have to be taking care of. So hopefully that's not one of these stories that we hear along the lines in 25 to 45 years, because everything takes so much time when it needs to get to the news instead of being more expeditiously. So hopefully that's not something that we're going to be a part of in the news anytime soon, and hopefully never. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Member Gomez. Member Tim.
Yes, I'd just like to say, as it relates to meeting the deadline, I feel reassured that Mr. Messler believes that we have extenuating circumstances that would warrant the state to issue us an extension. So, that's good news. I was concerned about the completion date, but I'm very optimistic. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Irving. All right, so as far as my comments go, I just want to congratulate the staff. I mean, this has really been years in the making, and every T has been crossed, every I has been dotted. We've dealt with every hiccup along the way. $16 million that was $16.8 million originally requested, we didn't accept because we couldn't spend the money with the short amount of time that the state was going to give us. Then got 28 million. So very, very proud of our team, having done a very, very good job anticipating all the needs. The fact that we haven't had any major pitfalls, I think speaks a lot to the diligence of our team here in the city of Victorville, and their expertise and their willingness to reach out and learn how to really do this well for our community. So hats off to everyone. Chair closes the discussion period. Madam Clerk, the vote, please.
Councilmember Becerra.
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez.
No on 25 and yes on the rest.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously for all items but 25. Councilmember Gomez votes no on item 25.
Thank you very much. So congratulations to our team. Congratulations to all those that have worked so faithfully with the city to move this project forward for our vulnerable community. All right, with that said, we're going to now move on to city manager reports. And just to be clear, we adopted staff recommendations on each of those items. Moving on to 26 city manager reports, Mr. Metzler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Just a few. On the recreation side of the house, we have a new program that the rec team had actually put together that we're actually rolling out. We've actually started taking on applications. It's called the Teen Activity Group. And this is a new program opportunity for teens age 13 to 17 to focus on community engagement, college prep, future job opportunities and provide volunteer hours for their schools. So that is ongoing and taking place between the hours of 6:30 and 8 at the community center Thursdays. On the animal care and control side of the house, this month of August is Clear the Shelter Month at our contract animal shelter, which is Victor Valley Animal Protection League. The goal this month is to clear the shelter of all animals available for adoption and find them loving homes. During the month of August, dog adoptions are only $20 and cat adoptions are $10. On the engineering side of the house, one major project that we've been working on that you're familiar with is Arrowhead and 7th Street. And so with that, paving was complete on this last Friday, August 12th. The striping on those roads should be completed by the end of August. At Planning Commission, we've actually announced a couple of projects. There was an 18,000 square foot all-inclusive elderly care facility that was approved at the commission level to be located at Bear Valley Road and Amethyst Road. That project is moving towards the review of construction drawings. The Planning Commission also approved 152 single-family lots, so residential is still progressing. On the building side, we do have some commercial development updates. Fairfield by Marriott is expected to build on the corner of Cottonwood and Monarch. Those plans are actually in review. CarMax, an update there. The permit is ready for issuance, so we should anticipate construction on that fairly soon. And with that, I'll go ahead and just so that you have it handy, I'll forward my update in writing to you in the morning with the building activity report that shows you all the variety of different permits and projects we're working on. That's all I have at this time, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Metzler. Moving on to item number 27, this is discussion and possible action regarding upcoming agenda items. Member Gomez.
So discussion and resolution that's pertinent to fireworks related to penalties and alternate options for the city to be agendized in September 2022 in a general meeting. That's my desire to make a motion for.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion dies. Anything further, Member Gomez?
Yes, absolutely. To increase animal control budget and employee base, since currently the sector of the city is impacted and understaffed, to be agendized for discussion and action in September 2022 regular meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, if I could do a secondary motion on
A
that.
substitute motion. Mhm.
Can we receive a report from staff on calls and personnel and everything before we discuss changing their budget?
Yes, so I'll second that substitute motion.
No different. It's a friendly amendment. I would have
It's
generously adopted, and that's what's on the record.
Member Gomez.
Just stop,
That is not a
stop,
friendly
stop,
amendment.
just
Member
stop,
is,
stop,
not
just
in
stop.
order.
Just
will yield
stop,
to the
lady, stop. We got your word. I already said what I need to say.
The vote.
Councilmember Becerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Gomez,
Absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem Irving,
Yes.
Mayor Jones.
Yes, and with the understanding that well, okay, anyway, moving on. Any other requests, Member Gomez?
No, that was just those two. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Irving.
I don't have any requests.
Thank you, Member Becerra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I was going to make a request, but I'll spare everyone my voice. I'll do it another time. Moving on to item number 28. This is reports from council members, beginning with Member Gomez.
Absolutely. My report typically is very similar to every other that I do bring forth. I'm very, very involved one-on-one with many residents in Victorville. I'm a full-time council member, so I'm allotted plenty of time to sit and listen to the most vulnerable, including people that live paycheck to paycheck. And that hasn't changed. And once I get my doctoral degree, it'll only increase more knowledge base so I can continue to advocate with writing documents, bringing any kind of literacy that I could with members who may not have the time or wish to, use me as someone who can, freely provide that service, because these 6 years of experience have been a very good wealth of knowledge for the community members. So it never changes. I sit in anything that I can just to grab the information, public meeting, a public conference, even though I may not have the finances, I do find a way where I'm able to, mitigate that. And I'm always becoming that voice of necessity for those that continue to need it. So thank you. That's my report for tonight.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mayor Pro Tem? Oh, you already did. I'm sorry. All right, so I'm going to keep mine very brief. First and foremost, I want to thank all of my colleagues and everybody listening tonight for, did I miss you? I did miss you. I'm sorry. Member Becerra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As sitting on the VVTA board, there was no meeting, but they're still moving forward. We're looking at electric buses very, very highly all over since VVTA goes all over the high desert. MDA QMD, also no meeting, but everything's moving forward there. As you've seen, thank you very much to Janelle and your staff, everything for moving the Wellness Center forward to help those most vulnerable, to give them a place to stay. Thank you very much for you and your staff and everything you've done to get us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Member Becerra. My apologies. All right, now I'm going to speak and very, very briefly. And as I was about to say, thank you to everyone for bearing with me with my constant coughing and the chewing on cough drops all night long. So I do want to take a moment to welcome Mr. Islam. We're so happy to have you with us. We look forward to working with you. And the fact that you already knew so much about everything that's going on and you've just been here a short time is impressive. So thank you for being with us. And August is typically a rather slow month on the work that we do on outside agencies and boards and commissions. And so that same thing holds true for me. However, I am happy to report that I was recently appointed by the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority board president to serve on its Measure I ad hoc committee. So that's a big get for Victorville, because we need to be an important part of that discussion going forward. So I'm very proud of that appointment. And then I was also very thrilled to hear about the all-inclusive elderly center that was approved by the Planning Commission. That means so much to me, having taken care of my elderly mother-in-law many years ago, who had a lot of problems. And in taking her to the doctors, I was always struck by so many elderly people that had no one to take them to the appointments or bring them home, and people were calling taxis. And so the individuals that are putting all of this together for our community have a big heart, clearly, for our community, and making sure that it's all done right for the, among the most vulnerable in our community. So I'm so happy that they're going to be part of our community. And with that said, that concludes our business for this evening. And as a matter of housekeeping, all council members, staff, and audience members will kindly vacate council chambers in City Hall within 10 minutes. That's 8:58 p.m. so that these facilities may be cleaned and secured for the evening. Members of the public are not permitted behind the dais. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is adjourned.